Good evening. I'd like to call the May 24th, 2022 meeting of the Reading ARPA Advisory Committee to order. I'm just going to go over the agenda briefly tonight because we have a few presenters. So we start, as always, with some public comment. We're going to have a follow-up presentation from Elder Services about their requests. They had spoke at our last meeting, and the committee wanted some more clarification just on some of their requests. So they weren't sure if some were personnel, and had they looked into things like additional space. So we're going to hear about that. That information is also in the packet posted online for anyone watching at home. Then following that, we're going to have a brief follow-up from the Reading first responders. They had come to speak to us in public comment, and we had asked, can you do a little research or just tell us what you know about other communities? And they did provide that information. It was in our last packet. We'll just briefly touch on it again. Then we have I'm not going to remember what it stands for, so I'll just call it the acronym, AFSCME Local 1703, represented by Mr. Michael Fiorentino. That represents a few unions in town, that is going to speak to a topic similar to the first responders about, pay for those who worked during the pandemic, and whether that, and why ARPA money, some ARPA money should be for that. Following that, we have a presentation from the Reading Historical Commission, and they have some fairly modest needs that are listed in the packet. And the last presentation will be from Conservation, who also was good enough to send us some very specific needs that are listed in the packet. Then we will just go over future agenda items, go over our minutes. At some point in the evening, I think we're going to just briefly remind the audience about our survey, which opened last week, and now we finally have paper copies out. I think revised versions of the paper copies to be a little bit more friendly to non-mobile in the library, senior center, and town meeting. Fidel, do you want to go over just how the response on that now, or do we want to do it at the end? Because I don't want to keep Jean waiting. Well, we're going to have public comment first, but maybe we can just touch into that. So before...
Can I interrupt just for a second? Can I call the select board to order, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
And any other boards to be called to order, or committees? I don't think. Okay, so is there, before we get into all of our agenda, is there any public comment? Jackie, does anyone have a hand raised that you can see?
No hands on Zoom.
Okay. Okay, so I guess just briefly before Jean, is Jean going to be speaking? Yeah. Right there, yeah, I'm looking, so you'll see you on Zoom, Jean, sorry. Fidel just has some exciting news on, just to let us know the response rate on the survey, because I want to still encourage, I'd love to get the record number of responses of anyone's survey. I don't know that we'll have that, so if you can just tell us, we'll start the meeting off on a great note, and it'll just get better.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So the survey officially launched on Thursday, and in the first day we had over 300 responses on SurveyMonkey. So we are now over 500 responses on SurveyMonkey. The survey was in the town manager newsletter. It's been shared, I think, on Facebook by the town, certainly, but also by a few of the members individually. I think we modified the paper copy to make it more user-friendly, if you will, to folks. And Jane Wellman has now made those available at the library, at the town clerk's office, and at the senior center. So these surveys will eventually have to make their way back to Jane Wellman, who is going to type up those results. But if you get a paper survey in the library, just return it to the library, or you can always bring it to the town clerk's office, and they know, obviously, we printed out a bunch of copies, but we will make sure they're always available.
Can someone put them in the Dropbox outside of Town Hall, and then, like, if they're driving through?
Absolutely,
That would-
definitely.
Okay, and so, and if anyone, the survey can be done on the computer or phone, if someone really has a lot to say on the open response questions, the paper copy might be easier for you versus trying to type on a phone, so you can grab one of those. All right. Well, thank you. So,
Thank you.
Jean, you're on.
Thank you very much for having me tonight. Can everybody hear me? All right. So I wanted to thank you for having me again to talk to the ARPA Advisory Committee on the Elder Services needs and requests that is before you. Before I get into the presentation, I would like to welcome my fellow coworkers, Kevin Bowmiller. Many of you know Kevin from his work as the Veterans Agent, but he's also the Community Services Director, overseeing recreation and Elder Human Services. Kevin, sadly, is going to be retiring at the end of June, so we're sad to see him go and wish him nothing but the best. But he's been hitting the pavement every day, and so we appreciate those efforts. Also with us tonight is Jenna Fiorente, who many of you know as our Recreation Administrator. Jenna has been promoted to the new Community Services Director, and today is her second day on the job. So thank you, Jenna, for coming and for taking on this exciting next chapter. And also with us, the staff from Elder Services, the Elder Services Administrator, Amy O'Brien, who is probably someone you see on a day-to-day basis at the Pleasant Street Center. So thank you, Amy. I also want to acknowledge the patrons of the Senior Center here tonight, Rosemarie DiBenedetto, who is a frequent flyer. Thank you for coming out. We really appreciate it. And then there are lots of people here from the Council on Aging, the Council on Aging Chair, and we've worked very closely. It's been a great collaboration. These projects tend to do that and get you all kind of in the same mode of thinking, and that's been a wonderful outcome. If nothing else happens, we're talking all the time about ideas and sharing ideas and working collaboratively, so this has been great. Marilyn Shapley, who's the chair, Nancy Zemlek, and John Parsons. And then in the way back is John Sasso, who is on Recalc, the committee that's the ad hoc committee, and he's been really involved and really excited. So thank you all. So if we could go to the next slide. Okay. So this slide is about the growing population of senior citizens. This comes from the UMass presentation back a few months ago when we had a public forum. But I thought it was worth noting so that we could get a good picture of how many seniors do we have. This is absolutely a growing demographic and one that is projected to continue. There are far more seniors now than there ever were when the Pleasant Street Center was planned. So that's why we find ourselves in the position that we're in with a building that really doesn't have the potential we're looking for. Next slide, please. So this is another slide that I grabbed from UMass, and this really tells you kind of where we've been. So in 1991, the Senior Center opened at the Pleasant Street Center location. And it served us well, and we had far fewer seniors back then. The staffing, the center, it's all done very well. And then in 2015, the Senior Center changed its name to the Pleasant Street Center to kind of rebrand and attract more participation, younger seniors. And then in 2017, we hired the UMass Gerontology Institute to do a needs assessment and tell us how we doing with this building, how we doing with staffing levels, and what should we be planning for the future. And many of you who have looked at that study, and I've talked about it a little bit, you know, they told us, your building is too small, you don't have enough staff, and you need to start thinking about what you're going to do. So we began making some modifications shortly after that with Jane Burns at the time, who was the Human Services Administrator, and then COVID hit. And as everyone knows, everything went upside down and sideways. So we're trying to now rebuild. We've been open for just under a year. We opened slowly to be safe. We're very concerned about safety. And so this has been a good opportunity to spend this time planning. And Kevin and I in particular have gone to all of the meetings of ReCalc. That's the Reading Community Center for Active Living. So this is the group that's the ad hoc group looking at, do we want a senior center or a community center? But we'll get into that in a minute. But ReCalc was appointed by the Select Board in 2021, and we've met consistently a couple times a month since then. And thanks to Mark Doxer for leading the charge and getting us going on that. And then we had a little bit of money set aside, so Public Services was able to hire the UMass Gerontology Institute again, and we got going in the beginning of 2022 to help us with some community outreach, because we know we need a feasibility study, but we kept saying, feasibility of what? What are we feasibility of? So before we start spending money on plans and ideas, we really need to decide, what are we planning for? Is this going to be a senior center? Is it going to be combined? Is it going to be a little bit of both? What do we think we want to do? And what does the community think? So we have a very extensive community outreach effort. We're going to be doing a survey, which I know everybody in this room loves surveys. We're going to be doing a community-wide survey in September, and we've met, the Council on Aging's involved, ReCalc's involved, going over every question. We'll be meeting on it tomorrow night. We really want it to be a good survey that we can get a lot of data, because quite frankly, we don't have the data to be able to make some decisions. And we all are very frustrated by that, because I wish I had all kinds of data tonight to show you facts about what's going on. But we are in the process of doing that, and it's exciting. Next slide, please. Again, what have we heard that seniors need? You know, it's been a tough couple of years for everybody, but for seniors in particular, it's been very isolating. And they've been really careful as a whole to not do things and be social. And so we know that's a big need. It always was a big need. And that's always was one of the main reasons we had a senior center, is to bring people together and have programs and activities and socialize. And we couldn't do it for a long time. Obviously, the other things, transportation, you know, we'd like to have a little fun. We have a great St. Patrick's Day group down there, and entertainment. We want to bring that back at some point, and trips and, you know, educational opportunities. Everybody's really wanting to get into their wellness mode. So there's a lot of things that seniors are interested in. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit just to set the stage on ReCalc. I spoke about it last time, but it's really what we're doing to do our homework and make sure we have a clear understanding of what the community will support. Next slide. Again, the planning process, we really want to create a vision, a far-reaching vision for the future, and be thoughtful and really take the long haul here, the long view. ReCalc, to their credit, is benchmarking 21 area communities. I was lucky enough to go back to my hometown in Arlington and see their community center and learn a lot about what they did there. But we've all learned a whole lot about what's going on out there, and that's been a wonderful opportunity. With UMass's help, we're doing a serious community engagement effort. And in case you're interested, little plug here, public forum number 3 is June 1st, 7 o'clock, right here at the Reading Public Library. And as Mark likes to describe it, it's a listening session, another opportunity in the third in a series for listening. That's what we want to do, we want to hear. And then we'll be doing some data collection between what we're collecting at the ReCalc group and what UMass is doing, and that will inform next steps. Next slide, please. This, again, is a little recap of what we talked about, the programming that we're requesting for the use of the ARPA funds. Since we know our building is tired and we know we need to think about something new, what this ask is about is really focusing away from the building, doing things in a different way, mostly with existing resources, not reinventing the wheel, but like the library, here we are. We had a wonderful meeting with the library earlier this week. They're very supportive. We're very excited about that, and we can work together. I also had a very interesting call today with Bertucci's. I was telling the staff, the woman who does all the booking at Bertucci's graduated from Reading High. And she was thrilled at the idea that we could partner with Bertucci's. They don't charge anything for the room, as long as we buy a modestly priced lunch for everybody. So it's those kinds of ideas where we can do more for seniors. We can do it in a modest way, and we don't have to, it's a bridge. We don't have to decide on making improvements to the building today. Virtual programs, the Council on Aging talked a lot about that. There's a company out there in Newton that we've been talking to. Kevin's been leading the charge on that, adding virtual programs. There is a little bit of improvements that we need for accessibility, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Adding more transportation. The bus trips are huge, people love them, and transportation's a big deal. And then, of course, the feasibility study is the biggie, and the volunteer coordinator and some additional resources for mental health, but really more under the wellness umbrella. Next slide, please. So as I say, we are looking long-term at needing a feasibility study. That is the next step in the process, the planning process. The work that we're doing now with UMass and with ReCalc and the Council on Aging, I like to call that pre-feasibility study. We're doing our homework to get ready for a feasibility study. The short-term programming we're looking for, again, outsourced supplemental services. And like I said, the library, more bus trips, virtual programs. We have a nice tent over at the center. We'd like to do some more programming under that. And what I like to call Wellness Wednesdays at the library. Something like, and it's still in discussion, but for discussion's sake, we could go into like maybe a morning session here at the library, a couple sessions, just to focus on wellness. And I don't mean taking blood pressure. I mean, let's all try and get out of this funk that we've all been in for the past couple of years. This is the same slide you saw last time. $300,000 is budgeted for a feasibility study. Andover spent $250,000, and they didn't do half the work that we're going to need. So I think 300 is a good number. Supplemental programming for space, senior bus trips, wellness programs, virtual programming, a volunteer coordinator that would be contracted. No one would be hired under any of this funding. It would not be a permanent thing. And then accessibility improvements. So I'll go through them one by one because I know that's kind of where we wanted to get some more detail. As I say, the feasibility study, we have a baseline scope. Oh, next slide, please, Jackie, sorry. We have a baseline scope of what would go into a feasibility study. So an architectural firm comes in, they evaluate existing conditions. How many square feet do you have? What kind of programs do you run? How many employees? And they identify where you're at currently. And then they go in and they evaluate, well, what kind of programs do you think you want? And we already will know that because we're doing all these surveys, focus groups, public forums. We're hearing what people want. And we begin to distill that down into how many square feet we're going to need to reach this next vision. Then they're going to go in and do alternative site identification. So, one idea is, can we just put an addition on the Pleasant Street Center? That's one idea. I don't know the answers to that, but that's one thing we'll be looking at. There's other alternative sites out there. I know everyone's read in the papers and heard in the meetings. We own some land in town. I don't know if those are good sites, bad sites. I have no idea. But there even could be other sites we haven't even learned about yet. And then each of those scenarios, we really need a good cost estimate. And I don't know if anybody saw in the Sunday Globe, the town of Pembroke had to go back to their town meeting because they didn't have the cost estimate correctly for their senior center project, which they've already started. And town meeting said no. So that's what we don't want to be in that movie. We've seen a few projects come and go with town meeting where the number that went in it wasn't quite right, and they needed to go back to town meeting. We're also working very closely with the Permanent Building Committee. We've had several sit-downs with them to make sure we're all, again, on the same page. And then, of course, public meetings, as we think about this baseline level of service, we have to continue to have this dialogue as we begin to evaluate options. We can't just say, okay, we're going to go with option A. No, this is a community project. The geotechnical, I budgeted for $30,000. We don't know about soils, about anything related to that. We need to figure that out for the Pleasant Street Center and the alternative locations. We certainly need to have a structural engineer look at the Pleasant Street Center. That's very important. If we miss that, we're really in trouble. We also really need to understand hazardous materials. The Pleasant Street Center is 140 years old. It was a former fire station. So we want to make sure, and that is the one area that the town of Pembroke made a mistake. They did not correctly estimate the cost of asbestos remediation, and it was a big number. So that line for hazardous materials, I cannot emphasize enough. We don't want to make the mistake the town of Pembroke made, and I'm sorry, I'm not picking on them. It was just in the Sunday Globe on Sunday, and I was like, wow, okay. And then the last two, the traffic and parking study, I've done community development work for, I don't want to say how long, a long time. And we always, every project, and for anybody who's watched CPDC meetings, every project we worry about parking. And for anybody who is on Park, Chris Haley, we know we talk a lot about parking. So we have to make sure we get that right. Not just what fits under zoning, what works for the site and the building. And we need to understand traffic, because if we stay at the Pleasant Street Center, that is a residential neighborhood. And my colleagues in the police station will tell us, please do your homework and make sure the traffic patterns work. Don't design it without carefully looking at that. And then last but certainly not least, this building is on the National Register of Historic Places. There is a preservation restriction on the building. And my experience with the post office, although it was a little different, the state had complete and full control, as they do with this preservation restriction. And the state can come back with any number of questions, concerns, requisitions for modifications, revising the thing, not just for the building, for the impact of the neighborhood. So the historical analysis is crucial. Next slide, please. Okay, so now going into some of these other line items beyond the feasibility study. $250,000 is budgeted for 24 months. And we break it down into a couple of different categories here. For rentals, churches, schools, although we know schools, it's probably more like a Saturday if it's going to be a school rental because the kids are in school. But we put in $70,000 here. Rec pays $35,000 a year to rent space for their programs, and we're kind of modifying this on rec. So we thought that was a pretty good number. It may be less because a lot of places, like I just mentioned about Bertucci's, as long as you're buying lunch there, they won't charge a room rental. So it could be less. Instructors, supplies, again, this is similar to the rec model. We bring in vendors. We bring in the chair yoga person that's going to come in, run the program, and that's on a contracted basis. And again, we're trying new things before we commit. This is a bridge to the future. This is an opportunity to say, let's try some things and see if it works, see if we get interest. Before we build this building to cater to chair yoga, maybe there isn't that much interest in chair yoga, and we can learn a few things before we invest in that long-term commitment. Moving on, this line item is a big one. Staff support, promotion, and administration at $100,000. So somebody said, well, you're going to be bringing in all these programs, adding all these things. Who's going to run it? Which is a very good program. Thank you, Mr. Sasso. Well, that $100,000 is there to add to existing staff. Again, this model is a supplemental services model. So we have existing part-time staff. And that line item is there to add capacity to the existing part-timers and help us run these things. Jenna's run programs for how many years, Jenna? So we have a lot of experience with Jenna, which is great. And then lastly, the budget for food. Food is a big deal. And if I'm not spending it on the top line for rental of space, if it comes in a lot lower, then we just budget it for food, and we pay Bertucci's the $20 a head, and that's how we spend the money. Moving on, senior bus trips. This is something we know the seniors really like. It's an opportunity to get out and see some things, and an exciting way to travel. This budget really calls for a modest amount of activity in 2022, or whatever the first year of the program is, and then the most of it is in the next 24 months or 23 months. We're talking about something like the holiday pops and being able to underwrite the cost of that trip, more than likely with some small amount that the senior will pay for the ticket. We'd like to discount the ticket and provide the transportation for free. We think we can maybe accommodate about 100 seniors for about $10,000. And then along those similar lines, not just have one bus going to an event, have a couple buses, have more seniors than we're currently serving. Next slide, please. The wellness program, this is the one that we really think is going to be a hit, because we keep hearing the seniors have had such a tough time. We all have. So something like meditation, Reiki, Tai Chi on the town common. These are kinds of different programs. We'd love to be able to do it here at the library, but we understand, we got to work out some of the details, but the library is very supportive. Thank you, Reading Public Library. And the bonus to this is that it extends the outreach and referral to our existing team, our existing clinician, and our existing Elder Human Services team. And I have to give a plug to that team, because our nurse advocate and our case manager, thank you, I always have a problem with that. They have done an incredible job and helped so many people and been a lifeline to so many people in need. And it's been a tough, demanding time. And now that we have the clinician at the police department and Tanya, we've already done so much more. So many examples of how this team has come together to deal with some pretty serious issues. So we love the idea that now that team can be learning about people that begin to take part in these different activities, and we're now really off to the races. And then the next slide, please, is virtual programming. Again, this company out in Newton, we have a lot of information that we'd like to, offer things through Zoom. People are getting more and more familiar with that, and I think that's a nice opportunity to offer more. Again, that's over 24 months. And then second to last is this idea of a contracted volunteer coordinator. There are so many people in Reading that want to volunteer that if I put something out there tomorrow, I know I would get hundreds, easily. Whether it's a cooking class at RCTV or a stretching class here at the library, so many people want to give back and want to make a contribution to this community. I know it would be easy to get people. The hard part, going back to John Sasso's comment, who's going to run it? Who is going to coordinate all these wonderful people who want to teach how to make homemade pasta at RCTV? And this is why we need to contract someone and get this volunteer coordinator to get all these moving parts together. And this was a position that was in the budget many years ago before my time, but budgets being what they are and were, that position didn't continue. And then my last slide is the accessibility improvements. So this $50,000 budget, again, over 24 months, really goes for funding interpreters at events. And this is a key thing. We don't have a huge need for it, but we have enough of a need for it where we would like to offer sign language at programs. And Marilyn and I discussed this earlier today. At the state, they do it with everything. We should be doing it more. And the second half of that budget is, and Patrick and I were talking earlier about an audio system to enhance the room, and it's a T-loop system. They have it in this room, where you can use that audio loop with a hearing aid, and you can hear beautifully. So we should have that too. For $50,000, we can really do a lot with accessibility for programming. And last slide is my concluding slide. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. So I guess, any questions from the board on this? Chris?
I was going to go last this time around, but since everyone's jumping out of their seats. Yeah, thank you, Gene, for putting that together, because I know last time we had some questions and concerns about the breakdowns and everything, so it's good to see everything broken down out like that. Yeah, I definitely want to see something changing with what you have up there. I guess my only concern would be the 24 months, and then what are we going to do after that? But this is one of those moving part things where nobody knows what's going to happen after that anyway. I mean, this is just going to get us through until the next chapter, whatever that ends up being. So my only add into this is I was going to recommend an adjustment to it from 900,000 to $1 million, but for my idea of having a food truck end up servicing the seniors in Reading as well as everything else. So I know I talked to you earlier about that, and Mark as well. Essentially what I would like to see happen, we're going to have to do a little bit more research to see how feasible it would end up being, and I just want to see what everyone's thoughts here are on that topic. But essentially it would be, between 75 and 150,000 for a food truck. You'd end up making between 250 to 500 grand a year. So based off the contract that we'd have with whoever ends up getting the food truck from us, we might be able to make that money back in the 3 years that the person would have the contract. So that's essentially just scaling it where it's, just 10% of the proceeds from the food truck would end up going back into the, account to end up recouping the money. You could do 80 to 100 meals an hour out of it. I ended up finding the number on that earlier. So we can kind of gauge with the senior center. I don't know, Amy, how many meals have been there before?
Yeah, so we have not, since COVID, we've not had the daily lunch program. We've done, bringing food in and drive-by, goodie bags and that kind of thing.
Have you ever broken 100 there on prior years?
I think those kinds of numbers, the room can't really accommodate. That's problem number one.
Yeah.
We've had some special events, like I said, the St. Patrick's Day is a blast. That's probably 50, 60 people, and that's tight.
So essentially, this all came out because I had my office hours over at the senior center, and I was listening to some concerns. I forget your name, sorry. I want to say Rosemary. I wanted to say Mary Ellen. But just hearing that the food was, unedible before, like, who wants to be eating unedible stuff? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what's the point? So then, obviously, the numbers on that go down because no one wants to do that. So this would end up hopefully taking care of servicing the seniors. Essentially, I think I skipped around the idea, but essentially, the town would buy the food truck for, say, the 100 grand in the middle between the range. We'd then be able to have in the contract with whoever gets it. Once again, this only hinges upon whether or not we can get someone that's willing to do this, because currently we have job postings that are out there that are completely unfilled. So this is trying to somehow, finagle a way to get somebody to be a chef / whatever scenario that's going to happen. And essentially, the town would buy the truck. They'd be contracted to do a couple days for meals for the seniors during the week, And then the off times, they can go to North Reading, they can do whatever they want with the truck, and the town would get like 10% of the sales from wherever they're going. As you know, we have, like 8 events here in town a year, having a food truck for that. And then people knowing that they're spending the money is going back into the town just seems like a win-win. It all hinges upon, once again, us being able to find someone to do it. So we can all say, yay, let's spend the $100,000, and then nobody wants to do it. So, like when I was going over the idea with Mark, as I was talking through it, I almost wanted to just quit the job that I own and just do it myself, because I'm like, this just seems as if, how can this be like a fail by having all that? The seniors wouldn't get charged for the food, the town would still pay a portion of that kind of money, you know what I mean? It just, this way here, it would be something that's edible. You could have like a mobile Meals on Wheels kind of scenario. So if we had events here at the library, they come to the library. It would help with the isolation issue with seniors and everything, because we could even do some deliveries to houses, et cetera. It just seems like an out-of-the-box idea that I think would really work here. We just need somebody to actually do it, because we can't carry on with the way that things have been going. And this would act as a bridge if we did a 2 or 3 year contract with whoever would do this until the next chapter, and the town would still own the truck. So essentially, that's just what, I'd like to see in the future, if we can add it on a future agenda, or get everyone's thoughts now, what they think, if I'm like crazy or not crazy. Just, I think something has to be done. And hopefully this is one of those out-of-the-box kind of ways that maybe could really help the community as a whole, including focusing on the senior need. So that's my thoughts on this.
So I was just gonna follow up, this wouldn't be, I don't want to be a wet blanket on things, but I don't know if we as a town are allowed to go into a business of selling food. I would hope we would run this kind of thing by town council, because there's going to be, even if, it would be one thing if we bought a food truck and then, like an ambulance or a digger or something, and say another town wanted to borrow it from us, and then they took on the liability. But if we're, getting a cut of proceeds of a food truck, why can't we just go into a contract with someone who has a food truck and do that and hire them? Like, why do we need to, I don't know, why do we need to buy it to get the benefits? I guess someone would need to do, how much does it cost to hire a food truck? But I like the idea, the concept of providing more food to seniors, in better quality food. And I have seen, during the pandemic, food trucks were being used to deliver like meals to school children. And I don't know how the food pantry, like, I would imagine with the cost of food going up, that's probably a real need for seniors, not just coming here for a meal, but maybe getting, especially homebound seniors, getting lower cost groceries. And a food truck could do that. It doesn't have to cook the food. It could, be there to keep it fresh and hand it out. And so I like the idea, but I guess I would want to understand the complexities of the town going into business. I don't know.
It's more of, my idea was an incentive to get somebody to do it, because we can go ahead and want to throw money at, whoever. And if no one's willing to do it or whatever, it's more of, by the town providing it, someone might say, you know what, I have this great idea. I'm thinking, obviously they'd have to be Corey cleared, serve safe, the whole spiel, run by the Board of Health, whatever scenario they would have to
Yeah.
oversee it. But it's more of just having that incentive there, because us finding the lack of workers and everything that we need, we can't currently fill the positions that they have over there. So why are we just gonna, like, some random food truck is gonna wanna do Reading? Which brings me up to the other point that Mark and I ended up going over, is we might be able to share the cost with this with Reading or Wakefield or somebody else and partner with them.
I guess
Then
that's what I'm thinking.
that would
It could be
quadruple the amount of events.
A
because-
regional food
Yeah.
truck for senior centers might be something. Anyone else have a thought? I kind of jumped in. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, just, well, a second looking at the food truck, I hadn't thought of that, so that's a great idea. I mean, my only questions are more about like the ongoing, like 2025, right? So, like, I'd hate to see like the budget cut to happen before, like the volunteer coordinator, and get all this momentum, right? So I'm not sure, And even some of the other programs that I mentioned, like the bus trips, like, they're all great ideas, but, like, have you thought about how you'd prioritize it? Or,
Yeah.
like, how much of it you think could be, like, self-funded by, other avenues, say, if you had to? So.
Yeah, that's a great question. My idea is that we try this as a pilot program, and we can produce results and go back to town meeting and say, we have a part-time program coordinator in recreation. I have asked for the past 2 years, 2+ years, Jenna and I have worked together to see if we can get that full-time, and it never made the cut. So it didn't even make the cutting room. I gave it in my select board presentation in December of both of those years, and it was seriously cut to live within 2%, which is what the finance committee. So I'm really good at living within 2%, but I'm really bad at going beyond that, because it's up to the town manager to decide, no, Jean, you're not going to get that. So, but with data to support that, I think it's a different ask. And that's what I think the down payment on this pilot program is, to prove that we can do better with more resources, and this is the data to support it. So making that program coordinator, that's all she does, is coordinate programs for recreation. Making her full-time and having her run some of this post-funding here would be a no-brainer. Likewise, we're trying to fill a part-time job at the Pleasant Street Center for the senior center coordinator. That's a part-time job. Similarly, that job does programming. That job would be argued to be a full-time job. So converting these two part-time positions, they'll be doing this work anyway. They're budgeted under this to do this work. So we're trying it out. If it works, and if we have data to support it, I feel confident that we could go back to town meeting, and hopefully the town manager wouldn't cut it out of the budget the next time around, because he can have something to go by, concrete data. So that would be my suggestion. The other piece of this, which is another down payment on the future, is contracting out with a volunteer coordinator. We need someone to run it. Now we will have all kinds of volunteers and programs in place. I would like to think that that can be replicated with very little staff assistance and more volunteers involved in programming.
Okay. But are there any, like, other opportunities, though, like, to, like, more fees, or to fund this, like, out of, like, recreation somehow, or?
Well, there's a couple of things. Meryl and I were talking earlier today about this topic of food and the food pantry. The town of Wellesley started a program, it was also in the Boston Globe a few months ago, where they're now providing grab-and-go meals at the food pantry. And they got a $40,000 grant from the state to do that. So Meryl and I are putting our heads together on how can Reading get that. Let's maximize food opportunities at the food pantry for the people who really need it, because all of our staff, Carrie at the senior center, our case manager, she's qualifying all these people to make sure they qualify for the food pantry. So we have the system already in place. So we have those grab-and-go meals. We're really servicing the people who really need it. So I'm looking forward to seeing if we can get that going.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So, I see on the agenda we had a vote on this for the agenda tonight. So I guess the last time we were here, we had the school committee present, and they said, look, this is time sensitive because we have this $200,000 grant that we need to, get things in post, so we really need our money. I appreciate all the work that you've done, and a lot of these are great ideas, and we want to see them go forward. On the other hand, we just heard we have 500 survey responses that we haven't even looked at to know whether, maybe this is something we should spend, some other way. So where's the time urgency on this? What are the things that we, need to do
I don't know if
before
Fidel wants to talk to that.
we hear about the 500 people, plus survey responses? And we had, a time frame scheduled out as to, we're going to talk about these things and discuss them and get community input and, and present a report kind of in the fall at some point, I think was our original time frame. So I'm concerned that we're chopping away at our $7.5 million, and we're going to get to the end and say, gee, we had 500 survey responses that said we really ought to do this, but we don't have any money left.
Yeah, no, and I certainly appreciate that. I think what really shifted in my mind, right, was the the last meeting, right? And a few of the talking points were that the folks most affected in COVID were children and seniors, right? So this fund should be used to benefit those two populations, right? And to get them, hopefully to have some benefit, right, out of this hard time. The other thing is that part of the work of Recalc, right, has really shown the urgency of this, right? So I'm sure we've all heard the comments that a new senior center would be great, right? But what the seniors want is change now. Not a feasibility study, or more ideas of how to improve in the future, be it in 25, 26, 27. What they are looking for is to get services now, right? So I tell you that similar to what the superintendent stood here and said at the last meeting, right? I cannot go back into a forum, right, on June 1st and say, hey, we're thinking about this, right? We're analyzing this, right? What we keep hearing is that the seniors, who again were one of two groups that were most impacted by COVID, want to see something now. Bus trips now, free meals now, free programming now, right? So if in the first forum that we had, right, we had almost 100 seniors in a room, and all they kept saying is these conversations are great, these ideas are great, but what we are looking for is for action now. So in terms of urgency, it's those two forums that we had, right? I mean, and we're not asking for $2 million down payment on a new senior center, right? That is not what we're asking for. What we are asking for is to give us the ability to look at the seniors in the eyes and say, we heard you, it is urgent, it is dire, and we are going to do something now.
So you said that you want to do something now, but then the biggest ask is a feasibility study for something you're not going to do for a couple of years, right? So I guess I'm seeing a little disconnect there, right?
Yeah, so
in terms of what we need to vote on tonight, let's say, okay, great, let's do the bus trips, the wellness programs, those things that will start up now. But, the feasibility study, maybe we wait until the fall, because that's not, we're not going to build the new senior center this fall already anyway, right?
Yeah, but in a similar way, right? I mean, it's my understanding that we've known for a while that the senior center is not adequate, right? I mean, that is not a new epiphany, right? So I think that the work of Recalc is going to be galvanized, and really push forward if we have some funds behind it, right? Because Recalc is going to do all this work, right? And again, to identify what we already know, which is we need something different, right? And following all that work, the natural progression from a planning standpoint, an engineering standpoint, is to invest the money in looking at options, right? So asking for that down payment now, again, is a guarantee of us having some funds that will take those findings of Recalc and we'll be able to do something about it, right? So in terms of grants, what we can keep hearing from the federal government, from the state, is that they are looking for shovel-ready projects, right? things that are hashed out, are designed, right, and are real, right? I submitted a few earmarks requests for support on a new senior center, and what they told me is, it's an idea, keep chasing it, and once it's real, you come back to us, right? So having a fully flushed out feasibility study with some costs behind it and some real meat on the bones, I think really takes this to another level. I mean, and John Sasso and I we're speaking about the fact that it's true that a new center is 5 years, 7 years away. Who knows? But maybe there's something in between, right? Maybe it's rental of a space, either on Walkersbrook Drive or on Main Street or somewhere else, right? Having this money will allow us to pursue those options right now, so it doesn't have to be just we're going to park this money for a few years. It allows us to really pursue those discussions.
So if you had the money now, you would be able to start the feasibility study today, or when would you actually start the feasibility study?
If so recalc, right? And I don't want to speak for the committee, but one of the ideas, right, is to potentially lease other spaces, right? And it could be one big space or a few smaller places, right? That are more, a 3-year lease, a 5-year lease, and those kind of things. So if recalc, if the desire was to look at that earlier, right? I would consider that a part of the study.
But the study itself, the feasibility study, is a pretty long-term project. It's going to start, I thought it was going to be sort of part of what recalc is to sort of initiate the study. My impression before this was that wouldn't be starting until at least the fall anyway.
Yeah, so that is correct. That is the initial impression. In town meeting, right? Town meeting passed an instructional motion for myself and the staff to look at possible short-term leases, right? And we can't do that without some funding to really analyze the spaces, to look at what the options are. So while we wouldn't pursue the larger feasibility study, I think that having these funds now would allow us to at least honor the spirit of that motion.
And so the leasing stuff, that comes out of item number 2, the supplemental programming / space piece. It's not the feasibility study.
Well, that is a leasing space for programming in particular. What I'm saying is if recalc and the instructional motion of town meeting is asking that we look at possible short-term, like actually we rent the entire building or a wing or something like that, is what the instructional motion was asking us to do.
Can I clarify, following on what they're saying, were you saying that the renting the space and looking at the usage of the space is an input to the feasibility study, a necessary input? Is that what you mean?
That's what I mean.
Okay.
Correct.
Mark, I think you had your hands up.
Yeah, thanks, Marianne. So first of all, thanks for presenting and sharing. Thanks for the questions coming through. I think that the town meeting vote in terms of saying, hey, folks, there are short-term needs, let's deal with it, maybe it's a little bit of an exclamation point in terms of what's going on. There have been meetings of different groups. The select board has had some discussions on this and supported, obviously, recalc and moving things along. This board had a little discussion last time in terms of what's needed and a desire to get it pushed ahead. There are lots of possible ideas that could happen if the funding is in place to do it, and it gives a lot more flexibility to see what happens. we may be able to find some short-term space or not. There was a discussion the other evening, and you mentioned Walker's Brook Drive or even Ash Street, thinking about the RMLD facility and kind of reallocating how that's used. There are many different ideas. If those were to be pursued, we'd need to do some homework and see what's going on. This kind of gives, having this in place gives the flexibility to do that. I think Recalc's initial mission has been to come back kind of ASAP to the select board. The reality that we ran into was that we're almost in summer. We wanted to do a really good survey, and UMass had advised us to hang on a little bit to that survey, to not do it until the start of September. We may or may not have enough information to come back to town meeting for November, and maybe not. And the notion of having it here and coming out of ARPA funds is to kind of take that pressure off and say, do it right, we're going to take it to the next step, and here's the funding to get that stuff done. Clearly, if something wasn't spent, it can come back into the coffers. I don't think there's any problem with that. But I think this allows it all to be progressing, forward, kind of supporting what was talked about at town meeting and what we've talked about at the other boards so far. The only other thing I was going to mention is coming back to this notion of why the programming funds and 24 months and things like that. And I think what the discussion has been so far is it's a bridge and it's a pilot. It's to kind of see what things do work, to give us the opportunity to try some things, figure out what really is helpful, is making sense. And we are going to have to talk about operating budget implications after that. There's no question. But right now, we're not really sure what that should be, other than more. This gives us a chance to kind of assess that and work with it. I think, I forget if it was Gene or Fidel or both who said data. I think it was Gene. To actually have some data to work with and have some suggestions on how to take it forward. This is a long-term need of the community, and what we're talking specifically about is having ARPA kind of give it a kickstart to respond now to the problems that seniors are having, the isolation that's taken place from COVID, and go to the next step.
Sean, go ahead.
So, the way I view this is the absolute worst case is we spend 2 years sort of dramatically ramping up our programming and offerings. And if, worst case, the operating budget support isn't there for whatever we come out of that, in 2 years, we're no worse off than we are today, and we've given seniors 2 years to sort of really, really invested in 2 years sort of coming out of the pandemic. That's the absolute worst case. I think we probably will get to 2 years from now and be saying in town meeting, we should be spending another $250,000 a year or so, whatever the number is on programming for seniors. That doesn't feel inappropriate or outlandish to me, so I'm not terribly anxious about that. I'm thinking about this fairly simplistically maybe, but the number, I don't know why I'm looking at Mark's screen instead of my own, but
Because yours is black.
well, yeah, only because I looked at yours for so long, mine turned off. The number, the 900,000 figure, if I think about this in a relatively simplistic way, that doesn't feel like an inappropriate share of the $7.5 million, for the needs of seniors, particularly given the context of the conversation that we had last time around. So. I'm not, really kind of losing any sleep over this. I think the one thing that, Andrew, you were saying that, or maybe this is part of what you were thinking about, but it is in my head, is as I think about the feasibility study, I don't have any qualms about, saying 300,000, that feels like a reasonable number, let's go do it. But the test and learn angle on this really appeals to me, this angle of we're going to try a bunch of different things over the next 2 years. I'd hate for us to almost move too quickly in the feasibility study and not get the benefit of all that learning, right? We may find the virtual programming is more well-received than we expected. We may find that, the bus trips are where we really need to dial up and we need less, we don't need as much space as we thought if we have more stuff outside of town or, outside of the building or what have you. So I'd love to sort of just think about making sure that we conduct the feasibility study in a way, maybe it's phased in some sense, that allows us to get as much benefit from that test and learn process as we can. But otherwise, I don't have any real concerns about this evening.
And that is part of where I was getting at. And the other thing is just, I have no problem with 900K. I think if anything, it's maybe a small number, but I'm also aware that our charge was, we go to the survey, we're going out there right now to find out what the town really cares about. And again, sort of chipping away at something where it seems like for $300,000, you get the first 12 months of programming expansion, and we could do that that's got a real priority that we should vote on tonight. I'm sort of thinking like, what do you need tonight versus what should we take on as part of the bigger project? If we did the $300K for the first 12 months of programming, and then include the rest, and then what we're going to vote on after we get the survey results, that to me would be more in line with the charge of the committee and what our process was beforehand, as opposed to just everybody who raises their hand first comes in, gets voted on separately.
Andrew, when you're saying 300K, like, if we, can we all go to the slide with the 900 at the bottom? So
Yeah, so
it's like, which items on here
So the
are, do you
300K, it
view
sounds
as
like
time
the feasibility
sensitive?
study, we're not going to be spending that today, so the 900 becomes 600. And if that's being spread out over 2 years, then that's how I got to the very simple math.
Oh, okay, I thought you were like
Yeah.
looking at number 2 and finding,
No,
picking out
it's-
50.
I took 900 minus the 300 for the feasibility study and said, if this is being spent over 2 years, then half of 600 is 300.
Yeah, I mean, I'll again, I mean, I'll emphasize what I said earlier, right? I mean, and again, this is really a reflection of the vote last week, right? So if funding the entire amount right now, right? It gives us a lot of security, right? And we are able to conduct the work of recalc thoroughly, right? And it's fully funded. We won't be battling other priorities, be it here in this committee, or be it at FinCom, or be it at town meeting, right? Which we know we have a lot of those coming. In a similar fashion, funding 12 months of work only makes the fear of the unknown worse, right? So we are going to invest a ton of effort, right? I mean, Jenna's not going to be sleeping for the next 6 months, right? She is going to really work her tail off and ensure that we build an infrastructure that lasts, right? And for me and Jenna and Jean to invest that level of effort for an unknown is not something that I think is wise. I mean, if we are able to sleep well at night and know that we all the effort that we put in will be for a comfortable amount of time, and Recalc knows that there is a light at the end of the tunnel in their work, that their work will continue, and will tell us what we already know, and the phase after that it is already funded, right? So again, I'm just saying what was said at this podium, I guess not last week, 2 weeks ago. What we're asking for is to fund the senior need substantially, not partially, we are asking for to address the needs of the senior, which we have been hearing loud and clear over the last 2-3 months in forums, and not to add to the anxiety that the seniors already have.
And I just want to be clear, your argument is exactly the same argument that the school committee made on why we needed to fund all of the curriculum program, not just the first 2 years, and I didn't love it when they made it, and I'm not completely loving it now. And I'm torn. I mean, I'm going to vote for the 900K whenever we vote on it, whether it's now or in the fall. I'm just torn as a member of this committee. It was like, we were told, go out, find out what the real priorities are, do this survey, take your time, do it right. And now if we do this, we'll give away $3 million of our $7 million before we have any results from the survey.
I understand.
Zero.
Definitely.
And that, I'm torn on that.
I understand.
Chris, Jean, you wanted to respond?
Yeah, thank you. So the one thing that keeps coming back in my mind that makes this different than some of the other things is we did a study in 2017 on needs assessment, and we did have a community process. And we did look in the mirror and say, is the Pleasant Street Center the vehicle for serving the senior population? That was 5 years ago. And the answer was no. No, we are not serving seniors adequately 5 years ago. So it's been 5 years. And we know this to be true, that we don't hit the mark of what we should be doing for seniors.
I was also on the municipal building committee about 10 years ago and said the same thing.
So
I completely agree on that.
I think the
There's no doubt
argument
about
can be
that.
made that it's been a long time that we've known this problem exists, and we've known that we can do better, and we've known that we've missed serving people, and we need to do it now.
So first Chris, then Jeff, because Chris had his hand up before.
Yeah.
I let you talk.
Yeah, for me, and to Andrew and Jeff's point, to a point, coming into this, it was very simple for me. It was kids, seniors, hazard pay, and then everybody else is taken care of after that, which is the majority of us in this room. So the only thing ends up being the ratios that make sense. The 2 million for the schools, the 1 million-ish for, with my food truck idea, with the 1 million for the senior thing. It seems as if the ratios are lining up. And then as the survey comes in, the survey isn't going to say we're going to have more XYZ for the schools and all this kind of stuff. The experts already told us what they want. That's what they wanted, that's what we went for. The same thing with the seniors. A majority of it's going to be more food, more programming. It's not going to be some random, I need a food truck idea that some random person just comes up with. Like, I could see that coming back in the survey. It's going to be more of, the survey results are going to deal with everything else beyond that. Is it going to be like, do we go with the Birch Meadow idea, or perhaps 400 people say they want something else in the survey, and now we kind of pivot that direction? For me, it's very simple. The numbers and the ratios have to add up, and then it makes sense. Because I'm not going to tell Gene to go and do something else on here when they've been dealing with this for a decade, or however long it's been. So for me, the numbers, they add up. It's going the way it is. The survey results are going to come back, and then that's when we deal with the remainder of the money that we have. Because they can get the study started now, or at least know about doing whatever, they can earmark it going forward, et cetera. Just, we're going to do it anyway. If not, we might not have the money to end up giving them because we ended up doing other stuff. And then who's going to come up with it? We're going to have to anyway.
Okay, so Jeff, and then I think we had an audience comment too.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like you said, the Birch Meadow thing, right? That's been on the town's agenda for probably at least the same 5 years that we just heard for seniors. So, I mean, I still think that we really haven't heard from the bunch of the town. And, you know, Chris, you just said, hey, you know, you came in with these ideas. Well, fine, but that wasn't the charter, as Andrew was talking about. It's the town charter was get out and get the information from a large, you know, from all of the residents. So I guess, you know, without at least waiting till the survey ends, which is only, what, a month away that we're going to close the survey and get some of those results, I guess I don't feel I can support spending the whole $900,000 until we get some sense that we really surveyed a big part of the community.
Did you have your hand up, Mrs. Senator? You should go to the microphone just so the audience can hear you on cable, because this is live. Please, thank you. And just identify yourself for the record. We know you.
Hi, Rosemary DiBenedetto, Haystack Road, Reading. Reading Senior, I attend the Reading Senior Center for many classes, have many friends there, and I just want to say to you, tick-tock, tick-tock. The longer you go on, the more seniors are going to die. What I hear from people today is, we'll never see it. We'll never see it. The first study was 5 years ago. People in there were in their 80s. If you're talking 5 years, 12 years, we're not going to be around. It'll be nice to leave something for the next generation, but the funds you have available for seniors today need to be used for seniors today, whether it's more food available. Today we had a gathering there, and there were 4 men who came. Now, if you have, men like food, free food, meat. Men like meat. So to try to get more men there, that's what I think you have to do. Everybody likes food. And we need to gather, have a place to have coffee, donuts, maybe play cards, what have you. But the seniors have been home now for more than 2 years. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm ready to kill my husband. It's too much togetherness. So whatever you decide going forward, just think about the people who are living today, who have needs, And you're talking about renting spaces. I believe when we rented a space for the library, we were paying $12,000 a month. So rentals are not going to come cheap. And are we going to be throwing good money after bad? I don't know. Maybe you can do a lot more at the present center, scheduling different things, using what's available. We have a tent that we haven't used. I suggested to someone that we put a shed maybe in that space because we have no storage. We have chairs all over that place. So we need some storage space, maybe a shed rental, and just look at the programming and have more programs for seniors there and not throw good money after bad, because you're going to need money. You're going to need grants. You need to find a grant writer, somebody who can look for grants to help with future fund needs. So that's my point of view, but for the seniors, they want to be active now. They want to be together now. They want day trips. They want luncheons with good food, music, people who have knowledge on different subjects come in and talk to us about this QR code. Do you think that people over 70 know what a QR code is? Give me a break. People over 70 don't even have a computer. They don't even have printers, and you want them to respond to a QR code. I mean, it's not logical.
We do have paper surveys at the senior center now, so hopefully those will get out, and you can share, please tell your network that's where they are, and they're right upstairs at the desk.
Right, yes. Yes. So that's my input today. I hope it helps you.
Thank you. Mr. Sasso? And then I'll turn it on. Yeah, sorry, Sean. It's good to hear.
Thank you. John Sasso, Richards Road, town meeting member and member of the Recalc Committee. I think what folks have said today, the feedback from the committee, makes a lot of sense. I just want to provide just a couple points. One, just in terms of the urgency, so first of all, town meeting did vote overwhelmingly to support an instructional motion. So I think our elected officials did actually make a statement about what they wanted to see happen. And I commend the town staff for coming up with an initial plan and kind of getting ready to move forward with this. I definitely want to make sure, again, that it's stated that we have a very hardworking elder services group. They're doing a lot with very little. I think if you really want this to be successful, it needs to be communicated well to them. If they want to hire people for a certain amount of time and you tell them, well, we're going to give you a little bit of money now, but you can try to hire somebody, but they may not know that they're going to be here in 6 months. In today's environment, you're not going to get anybody. So I think we need to have a pretty strong communication to that group to say, we support you and we want the folks in your group to be engaged and be able to, as they've said, they've had an opening position there for 5 months that hasn't been able to be filled. So we really need to put some effort into it. Recalc's work is not done. We've been looking at some of the other communities. Reading's elder services budget is $250K, thereabouts, give or take. Other communities, 3, 4, 5 times the budget in very similar situations. So we've underfunded them. The 2017 report made it clear what the deficiencies are. I certainly think this is a priority, and I'd like to certainly support it as well. Chris, you asked the question that they can tell you the email I sent was, okay, that's great. What are you going to do at the end of this? I think we're going to have to be out in front of this with town meeting, be transparent, but also this will really give us some good insight into what's going to work and what isn't going to work. So I'll leave it there. I support this, and I really would like to see the committee move forward with it tonight, because I think it's important to get that message to our folks that this is important in the community and that we can actually bring staff on and they know what they're going into. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sean, you had a
Yeah, thanks. So I hear and respect the concerns about sort of putting the cart before the horse in terms of the survey. I'm finding it really difficult to imagine a scenario where the survey comes back with a result that says spending 12% on 26% or so of our population is not sort of supported by the survey results. So I'm in a place where I'm comfortable with this under those circumstances.
anyone else on the board? Mark, go ahead.
Thanks, Marianne. So Very well said. I don't think I can say it better than that, Sean.
Don't try. Let's just move on.
However, no. So I do think the food truck idea is really interesting and needs more thinking and processing before we do something like that. But I do think it makes sense to support the $900,000 now in our vote tonight, to move that forward, to support the programming, to support the efforts to try these different things, and to know that we have a clear next step. We're dealing with the short term, and we're talking about what's going to follow. So I'm comfortable supporting the 900.
So I'll just comment on what I've heard, because I think one of the concerns, and I appreciate it, and this also came up even with the school stuff, is, well, you have a charge of getting community input and, figuring out what the community wants. And it isn't just about people coming and asking. But the survey is just one way of getting that community input. I think all of you here and all of the meetings, and we're hearing from people on lots of things, are part of that community input. And it isn't just someone, sending a memo to Fidel that he forwards to me that says, this group would like 10,000 for this or that. We're getting, substantive presentations from different groups. We're going to have some after this vote, documenting the needs. And to me, that is as valid as the survey will supplement that. I think, was it Sean who said, 12%? And I just was like computing, yep, it's 12%. I didn't doubt you. I just like numbers. But I think that, no, it's 11.6 something, you round up, that's okay. But that is a good way of putting it. The survey does not have a section to say, and we all have this thought of how would you spend $100 and would you spend $11 on the seniors? Like, who knows, it could have been 20 had we asked that. But we're going to see priorities. And even within the priorities, some items on our survey are going to be similar. So it's going to just kind of confirm what I think we know the community values. So I have no problem with this money. I'd love to support the food truck idea, but I think we need to flesh that out. That certainly could come.
That's why I'm not proposing.
But I think we all need that kind of thinking, and I'm sure that maybe the incentive, talking about test to try, how much does it cost to hire a food truck for, bring an ice cream truck to the seniors or something? Like, we could try that out a few times and see what it is, if it's as part of the food. So, anyway, my main point was the survey is important, but all of these meetings are part of the community input, and I believe that supports what the select board charged us to do. So I'm prepared to hold the vote unless anyone else on the board here or has any other thoughts?
Would you like a motion?
Sure, I was gonna just wing it, but you're real good with motions, so you're my motion man.
Okay. I move to recommend that the select board allocate $900,000 in ARPA funds for the purposes of supporting elder services.
Second.
Okay, and we don't have Mr. Wise in the meeting on Zoom, so this will just be a hand vote. All those in favor? All those opposed?
I'm going to abstain because I wanted to hear the survey results. I don't want
Okay.
to vote against it, but
Okay, so, thank you. That's vote
601.
01. Okay, so, thank you for the Reading First Responders. Sorry, we're running a little behind schedule, but we had a good discussion. So I think Mr. Abadi is here, or someone's going to speak for the first responders. And I had got, yes, I don't know if everyone else, I got that presentation this afternoon.
Okay, I have a little bit of packet too, but
Yeah.
it's not all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, I don't think the packet was necessarily updated, but I have this on another window. Oh, thank you.
Great.
Okay, here's my email. Yeah, okay. So, okay, we had one member not here, so we just have an extra. I'll hold on to that and drop it off at his
We all set?
mailbox. Okay, yep, you're all set to go, thank you.
So my name is Richard Abadi, and I'm the president of the Reading Superior Officers Association at the Reading Police Department. I'm here with Chris Jones, who's the vice president of the same association, and Scott Craven, who's the president of the Reading Patrol Association. We do not have anyone with Dispatch Association or firefighters personnel that are actually working the shifts. You had mentioned that we had spoken at public comment, I think, a little while ago, and we've actually addressed, probably going back to this room, the first meeting, that financial forum.
Right.
We read a statement, and then we spoke at a public comment at a select board meeting. But if it's okay with you, I just wanted to give you a little background on that statement, if I could just read a little bit of that statement from our first meeting. So this was a joint statement from all four of those public safety unions. At that time, we read, "We are here tonight to speak on a topic presently undertaking the matters of town government and influenced by other groups. That issue being the American Rescue Plan Act, the federal law which was designated to infuse federal monies, not state or local tax revenues, back into the town for relief or compensation due to COVID-19 pandemic. I would like you all to think back approximately 26 months ago, mid-March of 2020. It was a time of uncertainty as cases were being detected in the greater Boston area. The super spreader biogen event had just occurred and cases in Reading were rising. The schools closed, lockdowns began, no essential employees were put on leave, and many employees were sent home from work. Thank goodness for Zoom. However, as firefighters, as police officers, as 911 dispatchers, we came to work every day and continue to provide a vital service, one which could not be Zoomed. At the onset of an unknown pandemic, with what protection we could put in place. We were issued masks, gowns, face shields, and antiseptic wipes. Our vehicles and workspaces were constantly cleaned. However, at the same time, we had no idea how the virus was spread. We had no idea if we were taking it home with our families. We were changing our uniforms in basements and garages. We were taking whatever steps we could to help us feel as safe as possible during these most trying times. We were masking, gloving up, gowning up, and we were answering calls. We're going into houses known to be COVID positive to transport sick patients to get the care they needed and deserved. In fact, to that date, back in this previous meeting, we had answered over 6,300 calls for service. And we were contracting COVID. Multiple members of the police force and fire unions, as well as their families, wives, children, and parents, even a pregnant wife, came down with the illness as a result of the first responder working in mostly unknown biohazardous conditions. Thankfully, the government, on many levels, had protocols and guidance to protect other workers while not punishing those that were infected. However, these cases continued to put additional stress on us and our families. Again, while others had the opportunity to work from home, we did not. One of the key aspects and intent of the legislation is for direct compensation to be paid to eligible first-line responders, the exact individuals we four unions represent. Compensation for hours worked during the most trying times of the pandemic, for its onset and rollout onto life-saving workers. Under the state and local portion of the law, it's allowed for premium pay for essential workers as designated by local officials. We are defined by statute, clearly fall under the umbrella of essential workers. It allows for back pay for hours worked up to $13 an hour, increase for a maximum dollar cap. If this was 26 months ago, I'm confident the government leaders would happily vote to do so, using funds that place no further burden on the residents of Reading. 26 months ago, we did our jobs without hesitation. We did not ask for special pay, though it was common talk about newspapers and social media. In the past 26 months, other legislation has been passed to address areas of relief or compensation for other parts of society. This is the first legislation that addressed the frontline public safety workers and gives the elected officials the opportunity to compensate their workers. That was the letter we had written and read back at that first meeting. Since the public comment, you had asked us to gain some compensation comparisons if we could. I think you said it was in the last packet?
Yeah, I think we put it in this packet. It's at page 22 of the packet. I asked the memo to be put in so I can see.
There's roughly 25 or 28 towns that we had found.
Yep.
So just part of this presentation that's on the screen now is just a little bit more of an overview. The first screen, Jack, if you can help me out. The Reading police officers and Reading firefighters provide essential emergency service during the darkest time of the pandemic and continue to serve our community on a daily basis. These emergency services workers conducted their duties in person despite the personal risk-related burdens to their families. Tonight, we've had Chief Clark and Chief Burns and our respective unions request your sincere consideration. The next slide, please, Jackie. Allowable ARPA fund usage. According to the guidance document provided by the U.S. Department of Treasury, the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds may be used to provide premium pay to eligible workers performing essential work during the pandemic. Emergency response workers were listed in the second category of eligible workers. Additionally, it notes that premium pay must be paid in addition to wages already received and pay retrospectively. The cost benefit. This group of essential workers is requesting $750,000 or 10% of the ARPA allocation for Reading firefighters, police, and dispatchers. This request is an allowable use of ARPA funds, but it may give the Select Board and ARPA Advisory Committee pause. This request is different than investing in a building or new resources. We're asking that you remember those essential workers that continue daily front-facing service during the most extreme times of the pandemic and compensate them as ARPA intended originally. These workers could not work remotely, put off their duties, or turn away. They showed up every day while many in the community were able to be at home with their families. We're asking for this is a breakdown of $7,281 per person for 103 staff. I would like to read you the letter of support from the chief, from both chiefs, that was not in this packet, so it won't be on Zoom for this is for the people on Zoom. We support the use of ARPA funds for premium pay to be allocated for public safety that provide exemplary and essential service during the pandemic. The presentation attached letter from essential emergency workers outlined the primary reasons for this fund allocation. As emergency workers, we entered this profession to serve our community. We proudly serve Reading, but need the Select Board and ARPA Committee to understand this was not business as usual. The pandemic added an additional layer of uncertainty, challenging working conditions, and a disproportionate burden was placed on our staff and their families. We are requesting 10% of the ARPA allocation from the town of Reading. The following chart outlines the proposed premium payments for these funds. It is broken down into the Firefighters Association, the Patrol Officers Association, and the dispatchers, everyone receiving equal pay. The comparisons, Marion, that you wanted, we discussed the Arlington one, and we had dug a little bit deeper into that because that was a really large sum of money that they originally just located. It was like $4.5 million, I think we said.
Yeah, I mean, they got, bigger
but
communities get more,
yeah,
so
they use-
percentages are useful.
Yep.
They got 35.
Yep.
Yeah, so it broke down for their police and fire, they gave $695,000. And then there's just a bunch of towns listed here that we found out that did get some distributions. And just the last slide is, again, the Emergency Workers Board, a disproportionate share of the pandemic burden while also balancing their personal and professional responsibilities. Use the ARPA funds for this intended purpose, invest in our most important resources employed by our town, our human resources. I'm not sure if we gave you enough, Marion. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're looking for at the time.
That's very helpful, and I think it's, having the exact amount, this is not, I don't believe this is a time-sensitive request. I mean, I think we're going to have all our decisions made by the fall, and survey information is coming in, but certainly, I think I share with what Chris said. When I came into this, I kind of assumed that some number for essential workers was going to be part of this. We all want to consider this amount and the other requests coming in, but I think that this is, it's, you put in service that we're all indebted to, so. Does anyone else have anything to offer?
I had some questions on the numbers here. So I guess in your slide, it was 7,000 per person, although I guess I see in the chief's letter, it's an average per employee. So is that?
Yeah, it's all about approximation. I think the chiefs would have to really operationally figure out who was eligible at the time for it.
And would that be like people who worked more hours would get?
I don't think it would do it that way. I think anyone who was employed during the pandemic, I don't know if they would
So
break it down
1
to
hour
an
versus-
hourly, like $8 an hour, something like that. I think we're just more fairness factor. Everyone worked, everyone would get the equal compensation.
As long as they were, not a new hire who came in after the pandemic.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
But
I mean,
if they-
we have people probably, particularly people who work, aren't employed.
What about people who retire? How does this work with someone who retired?
I don't know, that's in my purview.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's, you give the money to the chiefs and they can figure that one out.
And the numbers that you have for the other towns, like 1,500, 1,500, 1,000, was that flat rate or was that?
That was all flat. There's actually a few in there that say, like, some people got an hour of overtime a week retroactively, some people got $2 an hour, and I have to look at it myself, but some towns just did different things. Some people got, I don't know how they did it, but they gave people vacation days, maybe they put the money into the operating budget to backfill the vacation days.
In your thing, you mentioned there is sort of a cap of $13 an hour and a dollar figure. Have we?
The total dollar figure is $25,000
Okay.
an employee. A cap. The question was, I don't know if you heard that.
No, I was
He
just
asked-
looking to see
He
if
asked
someone
what
had
the
a
total cap was. In the ARPA language, it was as much as $13 an hour and not to exceed a $25,000 total.
Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, and just this list of towns is really helpful. So these, probably similar to like Reading, right? Other towns are probably still looking at how ARPA funds would be spent, I'm assuming? Like, this isn't a comprehensive list, or is
This
this?
is this is a list from Mascot, Massachusetts. What is your?
Chiefs of police?
Mascot. No, it's not the Chiefs of Police survey. This is one collective bargaining union that basically reach out to their towns that they represent, and this is the data they got. So it's not, we're a different collective bargaining union, the patrol officers, we're IBOP, they call us, and then the firefighters haven't gotten any numbers for us yet, but they're supposed to be getting some soon.
Okay. Do you have any sense, like, how much coverage that would be for, like, all the towns in Massachusetts, or?
Oh, you meaning, like?
Yeah, like the union coverage, like, if you looked at that percentage, like, is that
Yeah,
like
I don't.
10% or 50%?
I don't know how many they cover, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, okay,
It's just as-
all right.
So I was just looking like quickly on the list too. Some of these are larger cities, but like Bridgewater's population is 2,000 more than us. We're about 25, they're 27. So that's, for example, a comparable sized community that probably got similar ARPA money. So that's just to see, when I see what someone who got similar ARPA money was doing, that's useful too. I think Canton is in the ballpark too.
Yeah, we just started at that 10% mark because, a couple things. It was originally earmarked, an allowable expenditure for this purpose when the ARPA money first came out. It's not one of the special asks that everyone's here, and I'm a stakeholder in the town. I've lived in the town almost my entire life, and all the money that you've already appropriated, I'm 100% for it. I was just about to get up to speak about the seniors, but my mom goes to the senior center. My dad has about 40 paintings that he doesn't know where to hang because she makes him to know one every time she comes home. And I have kids in school, and I have teenage daughters who use all the water. So if you want to use anything to lower the water rates, feel free. But we just thought that 10% ask for the original intent of the funds wasn't much. I think that it falls under your bucket of community resources. I'm not sure what bucket you're putting it in.
Yeah, those were kind of informal, but starting with the major ones, when something doesn't fit the other ones, it was
Yeah.
kind of a community.
So that was somewhere around 1.5 million, and that would leave another $750,000 for other asks in that bucket. That's where we started.
Okay. Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, my only observation, so I'm fully in support of this conceptually. The premise makes sense to me. I think it makes a ton of sense for us to lean into sort of the original purposes of ARPA, even though we can technically spend it on anything, almost anything at this point. The 7,000 and change number, was backed into from that 10% ratio, which, again, on the surface doesn't cause me any heartburn. I think the only thing that I'm sort of thinking about is, your unions only represent a sliver of the folks that were in that eligible worker definition in the ARPA rule. And so I'm thinking about sort of how we, and I know we're not voting tonight, but I'm thinking about how we consider that context as well. DPW workers, educators who had to be in person for special education, students and things like that. There are other instances that had sort of the same, or similar risk levels on some sense and didn't have that ability to work from home. So I wanted, as we consider this and the other, and the other asks that are coming, I think we just need to keep that context in mind, that there are, other, and we're going to hear from another union tonight, but there are other, unions and other
Correct.
organizations that may be impacted as well.
Yeah, I think when we first talked about it, we started to say people that, other individuals that we knew.
Sure.
Like our building had facilities in it a lot,
Yeah.
But I just don't know what other departments did. I know a lot of departments sent their employees home, and that's how they started. DPW, everybody. That didn't start with us. And then they started with, one group works a day, the other group works a day, and they're days on and days off, or a week on and a week off. And that all becomes part of it too, I think, when you have that discussion to say, all right, well, was there a certain group that ended up at home being paid for 30 days because they did certain schedules? And I don't know all that, and I don't think it's up to us to know all that. I think that we can just make our ask, and then you guys figure it all out and what you think is fair and equitable.
Okay. Mark, did you have something?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, this is helpful. I think, and we're not voting tonight, but one of the things that we do need to think about, even a little bit beyond what you were saying, Sean, is that we're all very grateful to all the work that you folks did, literally in the field. I don't know how to express it exactly, but that's great. And I appreciate there are other folks here to present also. I think the educators had a very frontline experience. I don't think those are the words that they would use, but it was a very frontline experience also. And I think we may have both an opportunity and a risk here. This is a hard topic for most communities to deal with, and it will be for us too. But we need to think about kind of being thankful to the folks that really dug in for us. I would want this to be an opportunity to be, thankful in that way and not divisive in another way. And I think that it'll be a hard task on the select board in deciding kind of who's in, who's out, if we decide to do something like this. And, we're here tonight to hear some of the requests, and that's great. I think that's the right way to get it started. And then from there, we'll have to dig in to do some other work. But I would want to be very careful not to be divisive in kind of how we think about who might be in, who might be out. And I think that's one of the things that's going to weigh in my mind as we talk about this.
Chris, go ahead.
Thanks, Marion. And yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's really difficult to look back 26 months and realize, what we went through back then coming to now. The easiest thing for me to relate this to, that's what I typically do on anything that I have to make a decision, et cetera, is back then, I was a 40-year-old guy. I'm like, I get COVID, no big deal. And then I find out that because I have asthma as a pre-existing condition, I'm not Superman anymore, and I could actually die from this. So that's when I started getting worried, even for myself, and for you guys to be going out each and every day doing whatever, and being my scenario, but just going out to everybody. It's hard to realize it now because we're just walking around freely. Nothing ever really happened. But back then it was absurd, and I'm really grateful for everything that everybody put in back then, including the teachers and everything else that had to go in each and every day. There's a lot of people that didn't have to do what they did, and all of them did it without, batting an eye. So for me, seeing this number, I mean, obviously we can negotiate and work something off that. It's not going to end up like Haverhill with $500. That is for sure. That's like gas and dinner at this point. I don't even know how you get to that, but Haverhill, I assume, got way more money than us.
But maybe they just have a lot of employees too. I think that there's, I think we're all trying to think, you were here, we have another union that was here every day. There's some teachers that were, like, do we want to say, let's do what we can so that we accommodate everybody, even if it's a lower amount than each group might want, but everyone gets something, and then it's not, an insulting gift card amount. Like it's something that recognizes it, but also everybody, everybody that was here that was working, because we're going to hear from another union, and we haven't. Like this may inspire the additional para and teacher unions to come to us. They haven't yet, but you were the first to get the ball rolling and have us thinking about it and realizing, okay, what was the point of the money, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're probably the biggest group of people that were affected by it, right?
Right.
I mean, there's definitely handfuls of people in probably each department that had to keep coming in. I mean, if you think about the unified command they set up, that had representatives from a lot of people, and they had, in the beginning, they probably had some in-person meetings, and then Zoom got figured out.
And as you said, you knowingly had to go into environments where someone definitely had COVID.
Yeah, and a
Everyone
lot
else
of
was
things-
like,
yeah.
maybe they do, maybe they don't. You guys had to charge in there.
But a lot of things people forget, and like you just said, is it was like a ghost town. Like, it was really creepy, and people created their own bubbles of safety that they thought that, they did their quarantining, and then they were 2 weeks and said, okay, now we can open up to another bubble because we know they did it and we're all good. Well, that was never an option for people who continue to come in, right? Because you just kept coming home being like, oh, I had another contact today. So then you had other families who didn't want to be around you because you were constantly having contacts. And that's just one example of how it impacted the people who continued to work as essential employees on a daily basis. Your bubble was very small, and you're kind of isolated at the time because you were taking on an immense risk that people just didn't know what was out there and what they were dealing with. And you talk about people coming in and working with special ed kids, and however you identify it, I think it's probably going to have to be a pretty fine line, or else you're going to get really into the weeds, I would think. But that's up to you all.
Thank you. Did you want to speak?
I did, if that's okay.
Sure.
So my name's Erica Mcnamara. I live at 44 Greystone Way. I'm a Reading Police Department employee. I just wanted to say, as someone who was able to work remote for most of the pandemic because my role allowed me to, it was a very different experience for my colleagues in public safety who had to be front-facing. And I think Lieutenant Abadi's example of the bubble is just one example of the social implications and the emotional implications. But I think the one thing that they're a very humble group, and they're not going to tell you kind of how challenging this was, but there are a lot of implications for their families, not just for their children, but their extended families, not being able to see their parents if people had illnesses, really being kind of contained to their own family group because of the risk that they faced every day. We had officers who got COVID from prisoners. We had Reading firefighters get COVID from transporting patients, from responding to that, bringing that home to their families. And, there's still the implications that we have of long COVID. So there's still people who are living with the implications of the choices they made in March 2020 when we had very little scientific information about what was happening. I just want to say, as someone who had the opportunity to work from home and still do my job, it was a very different experience to be able to be at home with my family versus my colleagues who were unable to do that. So I just can't emphasize that enough. There was a lot of safety and security in being able to be at home and know where your family was and know that they were safe versus my colleagues who are having to go into people's houses who knowingly had COVID. And not knowing what that meant at that time, I really think it's important to take a step back. I also know my education colleagues and some of our other partners in facilities did do a lot of front-facing work, but it was very different than being on call 24/7, responding to the most extreme circumstances. So I hope that you'll take that into consideration. And I want you to know that for these 4 unions to come to you and ask for this, it's not an easy ask for them. They don't like asking for anything extra. But this is important because it's an allowable use of the funds, and we really think it's a priority for our community to use the funds as it was originally intended. So I hope that you'll take that into sincere consideration. I have watched these meetings as a resident, and I have to say that it is important that we respect the role that they play in our community. And so I hope that you will take this sincerely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Did you have another thing, John?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you guys again for all the
Thank you.
time.
Thank you so much for coming.
I'd appreciate it if we don't have to come back up again. Thank you.
No, we didn't.
Not personal.
Okay. So, next, we have another union on behalf of AFSME. Local.
Just ask me a question.
AFSME. Like, I don't want to say AFLAC, AFSME, Local 1703. Hi, sorry we're running behind schedule, but thank you for waiting.
No problem. I just want to thank the committee for putting us on the agenda tonight. We appreciate it. I'm going to be pretty brief, and we anticipate and look forward to collaboration going forward. I think today is about sort of getting the proverbial foot in the door for our members. So for folks who don't know, AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, it's a national union of over 1 million members. It's an affiliate of the AFL-CIO. And I'm a staff representative for AFSCME Council 93. We represent around 35,000 primarily municipal employees in northern New England. Here in Reading, we have about 125, maybe up to 150 members. And I'm just here to kind of make the pitch that, you know, we have school cafeteria workers, town and school custodial workers, DPW. We have, you know, we have people that maybe there were some short breaks in the beginning of the pandemic when basically everything was shut down except for, you know, like core functions like the previous speaker was talking about. But we have people that worked in person throughout the vast majority of the pandemic. I think, you know, our cafeteria workers, they're understaffed. Many of them up until recently were paid sub-minimum wage. And we just think, you know, to echo some of the points the other union brother was making up here, the funds are meant to be allocated in this way. We think it's, in terms of values and in terms of rewarding the boots on the ground who kind of kept things going, we think it's the right thing to do. We think it makes sense in terms of operations as well, just kind of giving a shot in the arm to people, kind of incentivizing it, feeling like, okay, this is a municipality that really values the service that we did. And just keeping that in mind. So we don't have any figures or anything at this point, and, you know, we just want to open it up, just start a dialogue, basically. And any questions people have or thoughts, I'd be more than willing to field.
Can I just ask one question? Are you, some of the ARPA intended funding was not only premium pay, but also, I think there was the category of pay for lower paid workers to supplement their pay?
Right.
Like, for example, the cafeteria workers
Right.
who were less than minimum wage. Is that what you're saying too?
Well, I think, so tonight I'm kind of making just a general pitch about all AFSCME members in the town, and I think we'll probably get into the weeds as we move forward on that and parsing that out. But I was just sort of using that to illustrate a point. But there's certainly, you know, our different units have different pay scales. But it's a fair question.
I mean, it kind of covers two categories. There's
Right.
workers who work the front line, but then I know there was also for lower paid workers.
Yes, right.
Which would cover even like para-unions too, if I think about.
I think
what I've
that's
seen
right.
in those wage charts.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay, so I jumped in, but did anyone else have a comment on board? Chris?
Thanks, Marion. So between the Reading First Responders in your group, is there any other unions that you can think of that aren't here? Or is that?
So the Reading teachers haven't
The
come to you?
teachers and paras and the secretaries, right?
That's a big one.
Okay, so there's another one as well.
That's three other unions, right?
I think is
Secretaries are their
that a
own
local, the MTA, the teachers?
Yeah.
Teachers.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
There's teachers, there's paras, and the clerical workers.
Yep.
Is that it?
I think you have the rest of them. The
Yeah.
rest of the school unions, I think, are.
AFSCME, yeah,
AFSCME, yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
So I think it would be helpful how they came up with all the rates and everything that other corresponding cities and towns might have been doing, et cetera.
Mhm.
Just something like that for the next time, kind of see what other communities have been doing
Sure.
in the same bracket.
And I just wanted to clarify, you said you have 125 members in Reading?
I was just ballparking it. I can get more, I want to say about 125 between the 7 units.
And one of the, regarding the cafeteria workers, I know there's a lot of churn in this staff, and some of the workers who worked during the pandemic may not be here now, or we may have new ones. Will this union be able to have a count of who worked during the pandemic? I don't know how we deal with people who aren't
We will know.
employees, but I know that's a group that there's been some churn.
Right. Yeah, we will be able to provide that information. We have records of that.
Because it seems like we're probably going to step back, and I can't speak for the board. I would step back and think about, okay, let's make a master number of the essential workers in all the unions, and what does the community say in the survey, and what's fair, and maybe certain unions worked more than other unions, but we come up with something. But it's good to kind of know how many people we're dealing with, because I
Right.
know just on the teacher and para end, I mean, you're gonna, if they come too, that's gonna be like 600-800 people just from there, so we may be hitting 1,000 employees.
That's about right, actually.
Yeah.
Really close to being right.
Between all the.
Gift card is.
So-
No.
April is a bunch.
So it's the folks that went before me tonight, and then us were the two that have kind of formally come forward at this point, is
no,
that right?
that's true, and
Okay.
okay. Anyone, did you have something, Andrew? Oh, I was kidding. So this is quick? Everyone else set?
Yeah, cool.
Okay, well, thank you for starting this, and we look forward to getting some more details.
Great.
Did you want to speak, sir?
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Bohannon. I'm from the Facilities Department. I'm the electrician for the town of Reading. As Rich stated earlier, during this whole thing, our department was here pretty much the entire time. Granted, we're not 24/7, but we have a very small shop, so we did have a couple days there where everybody didn't really know what was going on. So they said, okay, you stay home today, you come in tomorrow. We did that. We did that for 2 weeks. After that, it was all hands on deck. As Rich said, and people in the library can tell you, and all the other schools, we were there every day. We were going in, granted, I'm an electrician, but we help out with whatever needs to be done for the town and facilities, whether it's plumbing, or if I help with cleaners, or if I help custodians, whatever it needs to be done, we do it, and we didn't ask, we just came in and did it. Other things that, like Rich said, we were there every day. The difference is we'd go in there and we would be told, yeah, someone has COVID down the police station. We weren't told who, where they were, what they did, where their lockers were, So that's the kind of things we had to deal with. We knew there was COVID going on. Again, when I signed up for this job, I didn't sign up to possibly take this home to my wife or my kids or anything like that. So again, we were here when we did it. I'm a smaller group from all the other guys that he's representing. So Mike is representing. So I just wanted to say, if you're going to look at it, I think the money was originally designed for people who were here every day without question, and that's what we were. So, and that's just coming from the facilities side of the department. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
Any chance of a 2-minute break?
Okay, we were going to go into recess for 2 minutes before the next presentation, which would be Historical Commission and then Conservation.
wasn't on, sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's
okay.
on now.
I know, I've had enough meetings and I never have turned that mic on or off, sorry. Okay, so we are on the Historical Commission, which is page 23 of the packet. And this is a nice modest ask. Samantha, are you ready?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great, I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. And then, there we go. My name is Samantha Couture. I'm the chair of the Historical Commission. I've been a member since 2018, I think. When I'm not doing RHC stuff, I'm a conservator and the preservation librarian of the Massachusetts Historical Society. Our mission for the Historical Commission is to identify and record historic assets of the town and to develop and implement programs for their preservation. And the RHC was established in 1978, and we are responsible for taking care of the town archive, which is a different collection from the history collection that the public library has. And our archive mission statement, it says we shall acquire, maintain, and preserve published works, documents, bound and unbound manuscripts, photographs, and other items that support the mission of the RHC. The archive is actively managed by the members of the RHC and with some administrative assistance from Amanda Beatrice. And we receive many requests from researchers. A lot of our collections include photographs, maps, valuation books, atlases, and manuscripts. We've got the records of the Reading Female Anti-Slavery Society, which was the second anti-slavery society in Massachusetts. And just recently we received about 75 colonial era documents from DuPage County Historical Museum, who received them sort of by accident with another group of items they had bought relating to their history. So thanks to them, we got all these original documents and have been working with the Reading High School AP History class. They're transcribing the documents under the direction of Caroline Allison. And last week, Virginia Adams and Christine Keller went to the high school to show them some of the original documents so they could see them in person, and look at them. And we're hoping to make this an annual project for the high schoolers. We really want to do more to get students and just anyone in the town more interested in the history. And we have a lot of things that are really interesting and want to share more with the town. In 2019, we had a preservation needs assessment. It was a townwide assessment, which was a grant that we received. So we worked in conjunction with the Public Library, the Antiquarian Society, and the town clerk. The NEDCC, Northeast Document Conservation Center, did a whole report. They came and saw all the collections. And three of their big findings were we have lack of climate control with the occasional water leakage in the collection space. We have insufficient space and no room for growth, and sort of inadequate staffing and funding to really attend to the preservation needs that the collection has. There are some photos of the archive, which is really chock-a-block full. On the left, you can see we've been piling flat files up and up and up, and it's almost reached the top. It's very difficult to get to things and to store things. Part of the problem is there's a backlog of all the things we've been getting over the past couple of years. With a lack of space, what we end up with is we have things that haven't been cataloged yet. So there are a lot of things that we have, but we don't have a way for people to know about them. We don't have a way to search and find out, oh, we have this document. So that's just a general look at what we have to deal with. Now, a couple of the recommendations from that assessment were to document the collection's mission statement, policies, and procedures, and to advocate for increased time or staffing expansion dedicated to collections care, and to better monitor the storage environment. We have written up policies and have a much better handle now on things that come in. We at least have a regular vote, and it used to be folks would leave things outside the door for the archive, and that was a little tricky because we wouldn't know what it was or where it was from. So we have a much better handle on that. So our requests from ARPA are really, they're designed to improve the preservation and access to the unique items in our collections. So the first project for digitization of photographs and maps in Town Hall. In the 1980s, considerable funds were used to conserve and frame those original photographs and maps that are on display in the conference room and in the select board room. And they have been on continuous display since then. And photographs and maps are especially light sensitive. The recommended display time for photos is for 3 months every 5 years. And that, because light exposure will fade photographs, inks, and pigments, and that damage is irreversible. The framing is also not to exhibition standards, with no protection for UV light and as poor quality backing materials. So I recently took one out of the frame, and you can see pretty clearly the line where the middle of the photo has faded quite a bit. And so we really, what we propose is to digitize these, print high quality reproductions and reframe them and display reproductions to give the originals a break and out of the light. And they can still be displayed occasionally, but the continuous display is definitely causing some damage. But we still want people to be able to see these really interesting images. I know you've probably all seen them somewhere, building of Memorial Park, and some other places around town. The second project we need help with is archiving and cataloging, storing the collections. That's really the most time-consuming part of running an archive. It was already a challenge for us to find sufficient blocks of time to do those tasks. And then the COVID restrictions made the process much harder. It's a small space, so we could only work one at a time, and the building was restricted for a long time. So, but we still continue to get new things, and you can see in this photo, we have boxes and things still waiting to be sorted through and cataloged and worked on. So working under our direction, a temporary archivist can really help us to fully catalog and store the collection so that we know exactly what we have and can share it. Going along with that is to upgrade the collection management software. It will make it a lot easier for us to answer research questions. Right now, we have a database that we can only access from the computer in the town archive. So when a request comes in, folks have to usually wait for one of us to find the time to go in, look up the information, and then find the item if it's there. We can't be as responsive to people as we'd like to be. Most modern content management software is web-based. A web-based program would allow us, all the members, to see what we have and work with folks remotely, and then go into the archive as needed. And it would allow us to more quickly catalog the things that are waiting. So all these projects together will help us to fulfill RET's mission to collect items that record the historic assets of the town, and to give better access to everyone. And that's our current members. I can stop sharing and answer questions.
Mark and then Sean. And then
Thanks,
we'll look
Mary.
at this
Thanks,
one.
Samantha. Great to kind of see what's going on. Two questions. One, the current archives, are they actually in the basement of Town Hall? Is that where they are? Or are they here? They
They're
are.
right below public services.
Okay, they are. And the second question was of you have 3 items listed here, and I know you're looking for all 3. Are they roughly in priority order? Is the digitization the most important activity here?
Oh, boy.
Sorry.
I actually think having an archivist come in and get started would be the most useful thing. We should get those photos off the wall fairly soon, but, for the whole collection, that would be the most useful.
Thank you.
I mean, you could take them down and we just wouldn't have the art there. Like if you really, if it became a crisis, you could just take them down. Okay.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. And it's tricky because all these things happen so slowly that it's never really urgent, but if you wait long enough, then suddenly, you've got a photo that you could barely see anymore, so.
Okay, Sean, you had a comment?
Yeah, just a question about the 20 photographs and maps. Are they sort of the only pieces that are at risk, or is there something special about these 20 from among a larger collection? Like,
They're the ones that are currently on display and that have been hung for a long, long time.
Okay.
So they haven't been stored. They've been just out exposed to light, not really well framed for a long time.
Okay.
So that's. There are a few others things in the collection. We would like to have some more work done at some point, but those I think are at the biggest risk.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone at this end had a question? Chris?
Thanks, Marion. And thanks, Sam, for the presentation. I was for this on the select board during the budgeting process last time around, and I am for this once again. It's a very minimal ask, but I think preserving our town's history and whatnot should be, pretty up there on priorities because it's just fading away. So anything we can do to keep a copy of that for future generations, I'm all for that. And if you have anything with the gazebo out front that people don't think exist, if you can put that on the top of the priority list.
Bill Brown told me
It existed, Fidel and cosign.
So I had a question just about the collection management software. How is that different than like what Laura Gem has with the town clerk when she puts documents and you could search? Would it operate similarly? Is there any way that a town archive would link with that? Because I find that very useful. I mean, stuff has to be digitized at first, but can this link into software we already have?
It's possible. I could talk to Laura about that. We just the biggest hurdle is not being able to access anything from home for the members of the commission.
So it's really just linking the database that you have here, if there was a way to migrate that to an existing system we had, I guess.
Sure, but we would have to be able to access it from home, and right now, I can't get to any of the towns, like the drive where the historical commission keeps our things. I can't see that unless I go to the archive and open it.
Right, no, I was just meaning if that got put on, like if that all got migrated into Laura's system, then you could access it just the same way I go into the town archives and say, I want the minutes of the school committee meeting from October 2015, and I can go find them. Like the town archive could get put into that system, or are you going to have your own proprietary system that only you employees ask, or can the public access?
Probably would have to be something only we get to right away.
Never mind.
Usually, we were probably gonna go, I haven't picked out a software yet, but there are a lot of sort of subscription services where you pay an initial fee and then a small amount each year, and you have to pay per user, so we probably have 2 or 3 users from the commission, or maybe all of them, depending on how much money we've got. If you want to go the next hurdle and put them online, we probably would work with the clerk or the public library. And that was definitely things we talked about during that preservation survey, and COVID really kind of stopped us all.
Yeah, no, I guess that's what I thought you were doing, not just creating software that's just the historical. I thought you were putting it as part of the town system.
I think that's the ultimate goal.
I see.
So we might be able to skip getting something separate for now. But if we get an archivist, they'll really need a better system to keep track of all the data. We have to kind of rejigger.
No, you'd have to scan it all and meta tag it or.
Oh, scanning everything that we have would take years.
Yeah.
So this is just making catalog records, so we know, like, there's a letter from Joshua Eaton he wrote to his wife in such and such, and that catalog will tell us, describe what it is and when it was written and key players, the key people involved, and where it's kept in the archive. That's sort of the first step, that we don't have a full counting of everything.
Okay.
Yeah. But I would definitely have been working, hoping to work again with the group to have something where, it'd be great if the history librarian could look at our items. And if they have someone coming into the town halls or things, town archive has, town library doesn't have, and vice versa. So that's definitely part of the long-term plan.
Okay. Did you have another question, Mark? No? So I think, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, no, just a quick question. No, this is good. This might be a stretch, but for the digitization, is there any overlap? I think the library's looking at like digitizing like all the Reading Chronicles. Like they have something like going back to 1800s, right? I believe, like updating.
Probably. My guess is they already have it on microfilm.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah, I think that's updating it though, right? Like you can play.
Yeah, it's just digitizing the microfilm stuff, not paper things.
I know we had the board, remember there was the request that did make it into the budget, Board of Health was going to digitize all the Board of Health records going back some certain time, and there was $25,000 to hire a temp employee to do all that. Is a temporary archivist a specific career, or it's just any person and you deem them an archivist to start cataloging? Is that like a person you can hire?
Yeah, there are a lot of archivists with library degrees. You could work part-time or, one day here, one day there. I just meant temporary as, hire them for a certain amount of hours.
Right.
Be a contract and come in and do the work. Digitization with more historic documents is tricky too, because you might have things that are hard to handle. Those photos in Town Hall and the maps are very large, so you need big equipment.
Yeah, and that's been priced out. You think that's $7,500? It's pretty up to date, you think, or?
Yeah, to do all the, I've got one out now for a test. It's about $300 to get them digitized, because you need a special photography setup. You can't put it in a scanner. You can't just, pop it down. And then to make a nice reproduction is another $100 or $200, and then framing is expensive.
Yeah, no, exactly, yeah. No, it'd be great to save that before it's lost, so, thank you.
I think, if we could only do, 19 things with that amount of money, we'd do as many items as we could that are in that space. If we got a little less, we'd do as much as we could with whatever funds we have, and maybe supplement with some of our yearly budget.
This isn't an area with like rapidly increasing prices like commodity markets, I guess, too. One hopes.
No, it's not so bad. I went to Simmons. I have a library degree. I went to Simmons, and I work with a lot of archivists at the Massachusetts Historical Society. So finding someone who would be good, wouldn't be a problem for us. And they would really know how to describe the items, their importance. Some of the things we have, just we don't know what they are yet. It takes a little bit of research.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Okay, I think we are all set.
Great.
Right? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think Mr. Tyrone from Conservation has been patiently waiting the last presentation of the evening.
So there's 3 members on the.
Oh, okay, so several people from Conservation. I don't want to.
Alex.
I'll scroll
Andrew,
ahead.
and Chuck.
For those in the audience, if we have an audience, it's page 24 of the packet. And you're on.
Alex is the one who's presenting, is that right, Alex?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
You're great, thank you.
Hey, how you doing? First of all, I obviously want to thank the committee for their time. There's a lot of nuanced discussions, and, you know, as a public works employee myself and presenting with two non-union employees, you know, it's an honor that we're here in front of you and you're hearing our request for various projects to better the town and our interests and our passions, really. So my name is Alex Rizicki. I'm a senior civil engineer in the town of Reading. And with me is two awesome colleagues working on this project for the last couple of years, Andrew McNichol, a senior planner, and Chuck Tyrone in conservation. Next slide. So the project we're talking about today, some of you may have seen this in various stages throughout the last couple of years, but we're focusing on the Mullet Conservation Land. Just a brief history of the land, located on Willow Street up on the train tracks between Summer and Lowell as well. So the Morgan land was donated to the town in 1884. The rest of the land, the Sums land, was donated in 94. And the Conservation Commission finally received the land from the town in March of 2021. Again, at the beginning of the pandemic, or even a year into the pandemic. Around that same time in 2019, I took up a project with the Resilient Mystic Collaborative through the city of Cambridge, and we received through the Mystic River watershed, which is 21 different communities discharging to the Mystic River and eventually the Boston Harbor, we received about $350,000 to study regional flooding issues as a whole. Rather than one community dealing with their own problems, we decided to look big picture. And in looking big picture, we were trying to treat the 10-year storm event model for 2070. And I have a picture of what that looks like for Reading later in the presentation. And it's interesting what they're looking at, even all the way upstream in Reading. You may think because we're not on the ocean, we don't have inland flooding or stormwater issues, and we certainly see them now, and we'll see them more in the future. So for this project, there were 50 sites analyzed within the entire watershed. That resulted in 25 site visits throughout the entire watershed. Reading had 2, because we were in the upper watershed, we in theory have more room, and we have more, less urban space and less issues currently. That ended up with 6 conceptual designs, of which the Millett Sums Morgan design was lucky enough to be one. That grant took it to 10%. A subsequent grant took it to 70% conceptual design, and that's where we are today. Or that's where we were a couple months ago. We then have reached out to Senator Warren, Senator Markey, and Congressman Seth Moulton, who all have expressed interest in this project at varying degrees and varying funding levels. So you may ask, what are we doing here? And we'll get that to you. We've also put in an MVP application through the state, which is for climate change projects, with the help of Andrew and Chuck all along the way. Next slide. This is just a quick overview and a quick map of the Mystic River watershed and the RMC, which helped, get the project to where it is today. You can keep going through this one. And the next one should just show you kind of more where we're looking at. For those not too familiar, we're southwest of the high school, west of downtown, and right near Austin Prep. Next slide. And you can click right on. So the Millett Sums Morgan line, you can actually go back to the next one. This is a rather quick presentation, but the train tracks are running west and south of the site there. The Everett River, you can see, kind of goes through from Intervale Terrace through the Millett Sums Morgan land. There's an existing trail system that the Trails Committee maintains. It's done a lot of great work in already. And there's access through Hunt Street, Willow Street, and Lowell Street. Next slide. So this is kind of what we're looking at currently and why the site became sort of the potential for regional stormwater floodage that we can see now. These both pictures are not hard to find, not hard to take. This is just July of last year. I didn't have to search for these. I didn't have to go looking for these. That's the culvert on Lowell Street on the top picture. That's full. There's water's not going anywhere. any longer at that culvert. There's a downstream or upstream restriction. That water is now backing up into people's backyards. There's no room, there's nowhere for this to go in 2021. And people are looking a lot bigger and a lot further. The picture on the bottom is across the street at the old P&S, the current Mark Tango Plumbing. That culvert's also full. That culvert's not going anywhere other than people's backyards and personal property. And as the years go on, it goes further and further upstream until eventually the Birch Meadow complex itself is actually modeled as a pond under the 2070 10-year storm.
Thanks.
But, you know, just to highlight some of the current conditions more favorably, extensive work by the Trust Committee has put in a lot of boardwalks and passive recreation paths that are also eventually underwater on storms like these. And there's no access for automobile parking or emergency services currently at the park, and there's really a limited entrance. It's sort of an easement between an existing owner and the railroad. And not to say that this happens every time it rains, but for those who can remember last July, we had a couple 1-inch, 2-inch storms back to back, and the phones were ringing off the hook with flooded basements and wet backyards, and this is a result of that. Next slide. So this is a conceptual plan of the 70% design that we've had Towards the Wooden Group put together for us through various public input. We've had 2 public hearings, we've flyered the neighborhood, we've had 2 online meetings. You know, we've asked anyone for what they'd like to see here. You know, Chuck has had his spin on what he sees as a successful park look like, and the planning department has facilitated the requests. And this is sort of what we're looking at. You know, water will come off of Lowell Street on the top right side of there. There'd be a pipe inside the existing culvert to relieve flow. There'd be some overland flow from the Arizona River that would sort of then kind of go meander its way through these series of constructed wetlands, through kind of a pipe system, and you can't follow my cursor now, but I'm kind of going right to left across the screen there. There's a series of boardwalks, and then in the middle, it kind of, yes, you know, you're right there now. And then going back to the left, it sort of fills back in these 7 different varying depths, sizes. They're basically mini stormwater wetland areas, and there's sort of a picture just all around on the educational components that we could include, the stormwater quality features that we could include, the stormwater quantity is really the driving factor, and then all above and beyond this sort of immersive passive recreation opportunity that would really help the town kind of get ahead and play defense on some of these larger events that are coming our way and some of these larger events that are already happening. And we've spoken to a lot of abutters. You know, at first there was some hesitance, but the project seems favorable, and it has full permits from conservation already. Next slide, and I think there's just 2 more. Won't keep you too long. Some of the project benefits, you know, inland flooding, local and regional invasive species, we're going to have to do sort of short term, which is why we're here with this request. Invasive species of Japanese knotweed really can only occur in June, and it takes about 3 years. So in order to not slow everything down, we really need to hit the ground running. And I'll get to kind of the request in another slide, but just open space, educational, green improvements. Next slide. All right, so this is where the request goes out. We've done our homework on grants and applications and opportunities, and we think all in at this point, this project's probably going to cost about $2.5 to $3 million total. We've reached out and requested earmarks from Moulton and the senators. We requested $1.5 million from them. After speaking with them, they thought that was an appropriate number, and they thought that number would be a possibility. So we didn't ask for the whole thing through the earmark process, and we've received, as Fidel could maybe vouch for us, we've received positive input from them, and I'm hopeful that some earmark money will come in, and this will lessen the burden for the town. After the earmarks were sent in, the other funding process that we could follow through was the MVP process through the state. Because this project was initially funded through planning and the MVP process, I do think it is very favorable that the MVP process wants to see things go to construction that they've already funded the plans for. And this project fits that, and it's a benchmark project for the MVP. And I think it'll be on the cover of the MVP project one day when it finally gets built. But the catch is the MVP project gets awarded in October. And we're sitting here in May with 90% designs. And we've made the decision as a town and as an entity that rather than going after 100,000 in design through the MVP process, and limiting our construction to waiting till October of 2023 now, we are going to expedite this project and have it ready for construction, which means we've put in a construction request through MVP. So the 100,000 that we're looking for will have to be internally funded, if not through this process or a portion through this process. So in order to maximize the grant applications and our earmark potential, and there's a little bit of nuance where you have to spend MVP by a certain amount of time, and you have to spend the earmarks by a certain amount of time. In order to line those things up, it just was getting very complicated without having the project ready to go. So that's where we are for now, and I think I had one, oh no, I don't have that slide with me, but if I could share my screen, I guess I'll just show you, leave you with the model I was talking about. And then we could take questions, and in the meantime, I'll kick it to Chuck and Andrew if they have anything that I missed.
So thank you, Alex, and to the ARPA committee, thank you for hearing us tonight. Great presentation, Alex. I thought that was wonderful. I'd like the committee to know that, not only do I support this project, but the Conservation Commission voted unanimously to approve the notice of intent that will oversee the work that's going to happen on this project. And this might have been said before, but it's part of a larger grant-funded effort designed to address current and future flooding within the Mystic River watershed. And the Millette area was selected for feasibility, for stormwater, wetlands, construction, and ecological benefits. The Thalen Bird Sanctuary is right over the tracks, and I think what we're getting here is, at the end of the construction project, we're going to reduce flooding locally and regionally, and we're going to wrap that all up in a beautiful park with ADA access, parking, a trail between Willow Street and onto Hunt Street, and then that'll continue on. People can get right down to the depot. It's close to our EJ community. It has a lot of benefits. I think town workers are going to all participate in our match. Forestry department and the DPW department, they always help. But I just wanted to leave you with that, and I just think it's a good project. And over to you, Andrew.
Yes, I echo the thanks to the committee and also to Alex and Chuck for really pushing this project through and being the leads on this initiative. So I'm recently involved in terms of the MVP grant, but Chuck briefly just mentioned another benefit, which is relation to the EJ community in Reading. And for those that don't know, after the 2020 census, an EJ community census block group was designated in Reading, our first. You can see it outlined here in green, part of the downtown extending down Woburn Street and Vine Street. And here's the project area here. So within the last few years alone, there's been sidewalk improvements on Vine Street and some of these surrounding neighborhoods. So it's a really good opportunity to connect to this EJ community as well as the other local residents and all residents in town. So that was just, it happened very quickly, and we shifted very quickly to the construction application for MVP. And I do echo Alex's sentiments that we think we have a very good project and a competitive project, and getting the plan design done is an essential step in taking that next step. So I'm happy to answer any questions related to MVP or the planning process, and then Alex and Chuck have been very supportive as well.
Could you explain what EJ is, Andrew, and why that's important?
Yes, apologies. EJ is an environmental justice community. This block group in Reading is designated under the income criteria. So the characteristics of this block group, the median household income is below the state average, and so it's been designated as that EJ group. And part of the MVP application is to support and provide outreach to sensitive areas and populations, whether they be EJ communities or other vulnerable populations. So we are planning through, if the MVP grant is awarded, to again provide public outreach, not townwide, but also to this specific area to help garner support and more input onto the application.
Can I ask a question about, you mentioned that this is flooding, an area where there's causing issues with flooding of homes, and it sounds like flooding of a business now that it's marked Tango and not the convenience store. Would that kind of flooding be addressed in other parts of our budget operationally? Or do we only deal with that? Do you know what I'm getting at? Like, if this weren't also involving conservation land, but we had something flooding, isn't there some part of the town budget, whether it's under water and sewer, does that deal with this as well?
So we have a stormwater enterprise, right? That enterprise would not be able to fund, this level of ask. So we do have a budget for it, but it wouldn't be big enough to pay for this.
Okay, and just my other question before I move it on to the board. So you didn't say that this was time sensitive, but as you were speaking, this reminded me of something the school said, because they said, well, we need this to be able to take advantage of a grant and not leave it on the table, where they were getting money for curriculum. And it sounds like you have these other grants already, this money that you've gotten, I'd have to go back to the slides, money that you might be likely to get, but you need to have the shovel-ready project, so this 100K will help you take advantage and not be able to say, no, we can't take those grants because we're not shovel-ready. Am I expressing that correctly?
That's essentially correct. We've positioned ourselves to be shovel-ready, and if this 100,000 doesn't come from here, there'll be other projects that don't get done in town because we've kind of decided that we're going to move forward in this sense. To your earlier question, I've been a professional engineer for about 10 years in the region, and I've never seen one drainage pipe get upsized. So there are issues like this in town, but drainage is the forgotten utility, and stormwater is the forgotten utility, and to upsize and meet capacity for those kind of storms, we can't keep up. We do respond to a lot of flooding, though.
Okay. Anyone else on the board? Mark?
Thanks, Marianne. So folks, back to the kind of the funding. So let's assume that somehow by hook or by crook, there's the 100 grand, you finish it, you're shovel ready. You've requested 2 grants, an earmark and an MVP. Is this the hope that we're going to get both, or is it one or the other? And then I'm looking at that, and it looks like we're going to need to come up with another $300,000 to $500,000. Is that right?
Yeah, so and Andrew can correct me if I'm wrong, I'll take the first shot at the earmarks require a 20% match on those grants, so eventually the town will have to come up with about $380,000 as a match. There is a capital improvement project slated for 2023 for climate change in the town that we're hopeful. We're actually presenting in front of the Climate Advisory Committee tomorrow to brief them on this. So there are funds in the future, but like we've alluded to, we need to start the invasive removal this June, and the $100,000 really frees up. We'd really be tying up money at the end of the fiscal year and the beginning of fiscal year that we hadn't planned for in the immediate short term until we made that decision to move forward with the design.
Got it.
And just to piggyback, what's also good about MVP, if it is awarded, is that in-kind matches can also be used, staff hours, and we submitted a whole spreadsheet on our expected staff hours, which would eat a portion of the 25% match requirement. And then there are other services that the town could look to provide, some sewer lining, some other funding, cash funding, monetary funding. There's a good combination of items that we can try to look to accommodate and meet the MVP match requirement. And we did submit a 2-year grant application, knowing that construction could extend into subsequent years when more the funding Alex mentioned could become available. So we believe that we're confident that we can meet that match requirement.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I mean, just.
Joe, then Sean.
No, I guess just to follow up on Mark's, so just so I'm tracking, so we think, like, I'm trying to understand, like, the worst-case scenario, though, would be, like, 300 I'm looking at the second line, like, the earmark for the 1.5 million, and then for the MVP, the 25 match, right? So that would be another 440,000, right? So
It would be one or the other.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
So if we didn't get the earmark, we would be on the hook for the full 440,000 MVP. The way we were kind of positioning ourselves is hopefully we can use some ARPA money, we get a little bit of an earmark, and then our MVP request, if we don't use it, we don't owe on it. So we could essentially give back the surplus. But you know, the cost estimate was done in June of last year, and knowing what we know is going on, you know, that came in at about 2.4. You know, that's probably, we're not looking at materials here, we're looking at earthwork, but, you know, gas prices and diesel prices are up, so we'd have to, we kind of, you know, the request is to get the consultant back on the job as soon as possible so that we are ready in September when and if we get an award.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I noted in the letters to Congressman Moulton, and I think you alluded to this during the presentation as well, that this project sort of rose to the top of a list as having regional benefits as well. Is there any, you know, beyond sort of the fact that this is state funding that we're pursuing, is there any possibility of any support from RMC or the Watershed Association or any of those other communities that would benefit from these mitigation measures we're going to take here?
Not financial. I guess I'll say that. I mean, they've been involved in the entire process. They were instrumental in submitting those earmarks, right? I mean, they attended all the meetings. They made the phone calls. I mean, they're helping us push to get these grants in the earmarks, but not a financial contribution. That's what the question is.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and I just wanted to, I think what Joe was alluding to, like, where do we find the match, right? If we do get it, so in our capital plan in FY24, we have a $1 million earmark, if you will, for a sustainability project, and this would be it, of course.
Okay, and right now, we don't really have that out, that's just a placeholder per se, right? You could think of it that way, so, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, great.
Anything from that end? Can I just ask again, and I think I didn't get my answer, or I might have missed it. So this is not, or is time sensitive? Like, if we don't make a final ARPA decision till September and you learn you get money at that time, is that too late? I just want to make sure I understand the timing of when you need to know if you get this.
It is time sensitive because we'd be tying up funds out of, I'd be taking all of Jane, the DPW director money, I'd be taking all of her money that she had until next July, if we're not able to get this. So we'd be having to, Fidel can speak more on how those accounts work and how we'd be moving money around, but the money would go a lot further today than it would go in September. But that's not to say that getting $100,000 for a match on a potential requirement of $400,000 wouldn't be helpful. So to answer your question, it would be more helpful now. It would take a lot of pressures off of the different departments who are dependent on that money to get through the fiscal year. But we wouldn't, I'm not gonna say we would turn it down in September either, but it is time sensitive in that I need to get the consultant working on the design. Fidel can speak more on how we make that happen without it, but we positioned ourselves that that's how we're gonna move forward.
Yeah, so we met with the chief of staff of Seth Moulton, and their respective counterparts were Senator Warren's office and Senator Markey's office, and they all said that this was a really attractive project for all those reasons, right? And they all gather their request, and it goes up to the federal level. So this was one of two requests, I believe, that Congressman put up, right, on a federal level. So I mean, I feel good about the likelihood. So getting this $100,000 right now allows us to just be shovel ready.
So right now, though, doesn't have to necessarily mean May of 22 or June of 22. Like, a decision could be made, say, we've been talking about the survey data, or if the survey data comes in and we have a meeting after the June 15th meeting with the start of FY23, like in July, would that still fall under the better to have it sooner versus later if we waited till we got the survey information in, which we should have by mid-June?
Yeah, I guess to that point, I may be spiting myself here, but that's not also to say that half of it now would not get me enough leg room to get going so that when July comes, I can get the rest. I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn on that.
No, that's helpful to know. So you're saying hypothetically, you'd want 50K in a June vote.
Every other board wants double. I'll settle for half now and half later, just to take the pressure off of
half later if there's any left, right?
Never.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I think what so we've had a few conversations. I mean, we're trying to steal, from other projects to get us there. Right? I think that ARPA, it would be a good way to get it done, but I think we're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
One way or another.
Yeah, no, and it's just thinking of our vote and then obviously select board vote, but also not, not slowing something down to be arbitrary.
Yeah.
Okay. Did anyone else have a comment on the
So
vote?
I just wanted to add
Sure.
one thing. This is not about the money, but it has to do with momentum. And, what would it do if we couldn't move forward? And right now, we've attracted a lot of outside interests on this project. There were 30 communities. They all presented several projects in their own town. And right now, the focus is on Reading and on this project. And we want to stay current and we want to stay in focus with Mystic River Watershed Association, with Seth Moulton's office. And we want to be able to move forward and be ready and make it look like, we're ready to step forward. So for that, it is time sensitive. We want to stay in front and on top of the wave and make sure that we can ride this thing out. And that has nothing to do with the money and how Alex just presented it. But as far as people focusing on this best project right here in this region right now, that's the momentum we have. And I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
I also had, that's a great point, Chuck. And I know this is being done in other towns to advance MVP applications. I know the town of Stoneham went to town meeting for ARPA funds for the same reason. And it does go a long way when you're asking for $1.5 million from the state to say, hey, the town of Reading already kicked in $50K because we agree with this project and we back this project. So I know it's, it is an amount, but it would mean a lot to the project, I think, to see that move forward.
So there's a symbolism to it, and there's a symbolism to our legislative body. Okay.
Well, and eventually the departments and Fidel's going to have to find a way, either through that $1 million earmark, to support this project if it moves forward. So chipping away at it with whatever we can and putting our best foot forward sets us up and takes the pressure off a little bit.
Got it. Okay. So I think we're all set. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's more common too, but like in terms of momentum, like I don't live too far from that area, and just walking it like half dozen times, I mean, I think it's a hidden gem even as is with the trails, right? And I keep telling people about it, and I think there's a lot of momentum within the town to take advantage of that space. And that's just as it is now. And some people will walk through there and go, it's like just a wetland, but I think it can look like really, pretty at different times of day. And, we don't have a lot of space like that in Reading. And
we don't have to pay for it. We already own, pay this, but we don't have to buy it. We own it.
Yeah,
We just have to.
And I think there's a lot of pedestrian access to it too. You don't necessarily have to drive there. There's a lot of, people that live in that area that can easily walk to it.
All the new 40Rs have someplace to walk to.
Yep, so.
All right, thank you very much.
Sorry, just
Oh,
one
sorry,
more
sorry, I'm sorry.
Just one
I
more,
keep
yeah,
saying
one more
that,
comment.
and the hands up.
So the project itself seems like sort of a no-brainer and seems like something we should support. I guess one thing I'm struggling with a little bit is just how to think about this. Is it almost sounds like we're being asked to spend or to allocate $100,000 to ensure that this other list of things happens. Like I've heard that we are all in on this. We're gonna figure out a way to get it shovel ready, for these grants, and it's an undefined list of things Jane would like to do that get deferred in the absence of this $100K. And I don't know, if I were Seth Moulton or I were Elizabeth Warren or whatever, and you told me that the town of Reading saw this as such a priority that we deferred X and Y and Z to make sure that we could be ready, ready for these grants and shovel ready. I think that would have a sort of a similar, weight, I would think. So I'm not suggesting that I'm opposed to allocating $100,000 for this. I think it makes sense. I'm just reflecting on like what is that decision actually? What outcome is going to be influenced by that decision? And I don't think it doesn't sound like it's the design work getting done and us being shovel ready in October. It sounds like it's some other list of things, which I'm sure are all very valuable and important. But if we're being asked to allocate this money, I don't think we're going to vote tonight anyway because it's not on our agenda. It might be helpful to get an understanding of what some of those deferred things would be, just so we can put it in context.
We'll come back to you on June 15th.
Yeah, that's going to be our next topic is future agenda. So.
Did everything I said, is that sort of a fair articulation of how you all are thinking of it?
Yeah, I think so. I can't speak to a specific project. It was more so, we would find 10 grand here, 20 grand here. That could be the difference between someone getting their road skimmed. There's a lot of cleanup in town in the stormwater funds that has to happen. We're considering a little cleanup at the DPW yard. With materials and everything costing so much more this year, I was told that I'm really asking at a bad time to stretch their budget, which is why Fidel and we had decided that this would be a great opportunity here. But waiting till June 15th for a vote or decision's not really gonna hurt a ton, to be completely fair. And like I said, you know, we just, knowing how busy the consultants are, I'd like to just give them enough time and not rush them, because this is not something that they can do in a month. This is gonna take them full survey, you know, full delineation. They have a lot of work to do, even though I have a full set of plans. There's you know, I could bring the scope of work next time, and the full amount was about $115,000 that they were requesting last year to finish the job. So, you know, we could wait till June, but it would take a lot of pressure off of a lot of other areas if we were able to receive this one.
Yeah, I'm not trying to slow things down. We don't have a choice but to wait till our next meeting.
Yeah, we can't vote tonight because it's not.
Yeah, it's not on our agenda.
We didn't
so-
notice it as we just said
Yeah.
presentation and not vote.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's this project on Franklin Street that probably isn't going to get done, but not to worry.
But we have a meeting coming on June 15th.
I'm just going to bombard C-click
and
fix.
I can note, we're going to transition into the future agenda items discussion. So I'm going to put down as a future agenda item, anyway, follow up on the conservation project. So, will you be available at our, will someone be available if we need it for any further questions for the June 15th meeting?
For $100,000, absolutely.
Yeah.
Here, in
I
person.
think we all can make it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. See you then.
All right.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, so that transitions into our kind of final substantive, sort of, agenda item of future agenda items. So what I have is what we just noted, follow up on that conservation project. We also had an email come in that the Birch Meadow Master Plan wanted to present again. And I think I wanted to be sure we understood the closing date of the survey. Is it June 15th, or did I hear June 16th?
I thought it was the Monday.
The Monday, okay, so we would be, discussing the survey results and hearing the survey results would probably be kind of maybe the bulk of the next meeting.
Yep.
So I'm just gonna note with a vote on that. Were you saying that the Birch Meadow Master Plan wanted a vote that night too, or just,
I mean, no.
no, just more information? So that will probably.
The Trails Committee wanted to come before you as well.
Oh, right, that was, I knew, because they were going to come tonight, that was the other.
$12,000 request.
I knew, I was going through my email, but I didn't want to miss anything was said. Does anyone else have another item that we should cover? I mean, go ahead, Chris.
Mine was just the food truck exploration. Maybe I can reach out to Lisa Egan, see how many maybe businesses might be interested.
I guess, and I would
And
just.
work with Fidel and.
Yeah, I would
see
just say run it by town council, because
Yeah.
I always feel like there's going to be something, if we're the first to do something,
Mhm.
there would be some other issue. Go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say, if we're going to talk about the food truck, can we also get some indication of what the barriers are to having good food at Pleasant Street? Like, that seems like sure, but we're going to spend $100,000 on a food truck. We could spend $100,000 on whatever that barrier
Well, I
is,
think
right?
they
You
just
know?
get food and reheat it, right, is what my understanding, like, it's like school lunches.
Yeah,
So if you've ever eaten one of those.
Yeah.
It was essentially, we used to contract with Mystic Valley Senior Services, and it was a brown bag.
Got it.
You know,
Okay.
It wasn't high quality, like, robust stuff, but instead of food truck, how about alternatives to delicious meals at the senior center?
So food truck.
Not alternative to
food
delicious
truck-
meals. Delicious meals.
Yeah, I mean,
And/or just an improvement in the senior food, so. Well, is that really the scope of our board, though? I mean, we're talking about money, we can't, it's not our board's job to talk, that's maybe a recalc, but it's not really our job to talk about the senior food, other than can ARPA money be spent to improve senior food?
Definitely.
But wasn't that already part of the 900K we voted? I
Not to
guess.
this level that
All right.
we're saying.
Yeah, that's 50
All right, well,
grand
we'll
spread
still-
over 2 years.
2 years.
Go ahead, and we'll work down the line, because I think there was a hand up at this end. Go ahead, Mark.
Could we put in a placeholder for affordable housing? The select board's going to talk about this next week a little bit in terms of kind of follow-up to discussions we were already having, also to town meeting, and kind of hearing what and how we might work on that. So placeholder meaning, not sure yet, but if we could put it there for now. I brought it up early on.
For June 15th?
Yes. It's starting to feel like, if I'm hearing correctly too, that we're starting to close in on having heard most everything at that point.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think
Yep.
that's,
So I think that's probably a good thing to put on there.
I think I see a hand down at this end, or no? Okay. So then I think the final thing, I don't know if anyone has had a chance to look at the minutes. We have two meetings worth of minutes, because I think at the last meeting, Mark, you had said something
read it.
needed to be corrected. I don't see
cannot what it is.
recall-
I did say that, but I don't see what it is. As I read it, the first one looks fine to me. I do have a suggested correction on the second one, but the first one looks fine.
Okay.
I just had a question on the first one. In the others present section, it says John Douglas Rotary, but then Tim Kelly without Rotary. I just wondered, what was the, I don't know, the sort of policy on whether to give someone's affiliation or not in the others present section?
Maybe, was it how they signed their name on a sign-in sheet? We were in the select board room at that time. I don't know.
I think John Douglas was formally giving the presentation on behalf of the Rotary. Tim spoke up, but wasn't the...
Well, I mean, then it, under public comment, it says Tim Kelly of the Rotary Club joined by John Douglas. So, you know,
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable point. I'm just saying that might have been the sort of discrepancy in how it was captured.
So do you want us to just change it?
So I would suggest either remove Rotary from John Douglas or add it to Tim Kelly, unless there's a reason.
Looking at the sign-in sheet now, it does, on the sign-in sheet, it does say John Douglas Rotary, and Tim Kelly didn't put an association, but I'm happy to put Rotary in there if.
But maybe he was speaking as a private individual and not on behalf. Is there, I don't know, who's the president of the Rotary? Is
John is.
John Douglas, so maybe he was authorized to speak on behalf of the Rotary, and the other one's just a public member.
So, I mean, is the policy, we take the, whatever they signed in with, and that's how it's gonna show up?
I guess.
I don't think there's a policy. I think
Geez,
it's
now next time I sign in, I can.
Guidelines.
practice, tradition, whatever Jackie feels like on a given day.
Pirates Code.
All right, so should I make a motion?
Yeah.
Add Rotary in there?
I personally, I think it's better to leave it as the way the person signed themselves in, because that's how they felt they were present at that meeting, what they were representing or not. I don't want to second guess them, right?
Especially if they were privy to the sign-in sheet already and they saw what somebody else put, they'd be more inclined to put it if they wanted to, because now they see these titles being added. So I'm inclined to leave it as well, however they signed in.
We have, with other members of other boards, they didn't write down their board affiliation, so that's not here either.
No,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
So one person
I tend to
did because they
leave it.
wanted it to be noted that way. Okay.
Would you like the motion?
Yeah, sure.
Move to approve the minutes of April 12th, 2022 and May 11th, 2022.
Hold on.
We haven't gone over the
That's
other
the
ones,
first
let's just do these minutes.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Take a friendly?
We could discuss them at the same time, but that's fine. Sure. Yeah, I'll take a friendly. We're only
Well,
discussing April
nobody
12th.
seconded it, so.
Fine, then let me rescind the motion and make a new motion. I move to approve the minutes of April 12th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, let's take a vote. All in approval? Okay, it looks like it's 7-0.
I move to approve the minutes of May 11th, 2022.
Well,
There are a couple
wait,
of
somebody
sections
had some comments on it, I think. Mark, you said you saw something in the second.
Yeah, so if you go to page 3
This was the school meeting, hold on. It's page 3 of the minutes.
of the minutes, and there's a
Okay.
paragraph that starts, committee members expressed concern. What I was going to suggest is, I think committee members expressed support However, they also had concerns about the issue of recurring expenses or salaries. It doesn't mention kind of the feeling of the meeting. There are a number of people who spoke in support, but it doesn't say that. So I would
We
suggest
say-
adding that.
Express support and concern, or you want support and then,
As I expressed support for the proposal, however, they also expressed concern that some of the requests, and keep going.
okay.
So I just suggest maybe a new sentence at the beginning. Committee members express general support, period.
And then a new sentence, committee member. Why
Also
don't we
expressed.
insert a sentence before this one to make it easier for her? So Jackie, maybe before the sentence that says committee members express concern, you'd say, committee members express support, period, and then committee members also express concern.
Perfect.
So does everyone, that seem reasonable? Was there anything else anyone had?
Two minor type of
Okay.
attendees. I don't know, Joe, you want to comment on?
Being
the spelling
Joe.
of the name?
Yeah, I go by Joe typically, but
Are you in Asia?
Where is it?
In the version that I got in the packet.
Oh, J-O-W. I skimmed right past that,
I
sorry.
wasn't going to give you a hard time on that.
Joe.
Special education should be teacher, Terry Mullen.
Third line down on that one. There you go.
Okay, and then I think,
I move to approve the minutes of May 11th, 2022 as amended on the floor.
Second.
okay, all in favor?
No, abstain, so.
Oh, yeah, because you were there. So 6, 0, and 1 abstain. And, okay, so and I'll entertain any other motions?
Okay, can I just,
Adjourn first, Mark.
okay, can you, probably out of order, I'm sorry, like, for an agenda item, like for the next meeting,
Yeah?
I'm just thinking back to the conversation we had earlier, right? Like in terms of like creating like that list of requests. Like I feel like we're making these decisions like bottom up, right? So
You would like to see a running list of requests that we've
maybe it's the
received so
running
far?
list, but start working towards like how we're like qualifying and categorizing, like when the funds are needed, you know, how it fits with the allocation. I don't know. Even if it's like a draft, it might help like kind of frame some of these decisions.
So maybe
we're
like a
making.
request balance sheet where we have the ARPA, we can list what's been spent,
Yeah,
what we've
I mean, just some way
allocated,
to
what we
track it better,
request.
and then that could work to like some type of final matrix that would provide people with more transparency, like in terms of like how these decisions are being made, right? Or, I don't know, just my own mind, it'd be a way to pressure test, like, okay, why are we giving 900,000 here, right? It met these certain criteria, or it didn't line up as well here.
I think if we create the table and then we review it in connection with the survey results, maybe?
Yeah, especially when we're getting the survey results back, I think it would be a good time
Okay,
to.
a status results table, and so.
Again, it's just like a draft version.
Well, I
like,
could
if
put in comments about, I mean, we all kind of, the minutes reflect our comments when we took the votes, but we could have a column for time sensitive, because that's, right now, we've taken two votes,
Yeah.
three votes, including tonight, all based on being time
Range of
sensitive.
dollar ask, yeah, like, I mean, just go back to some of the basic things that we want to capture,
Okay.
right? And then keep like iterating it through these meetings maybe, so.
I think it's useful, because I think we got a bunch tonight, we had a couple of the last meeting, and maybe just to remind us all, and who knows, maybe by June 15th, we might get another one.
Yeah.
I don't know, from another union or something. Okay, anything else before we have another motion?
Is anyone else from the select board on the call? It looks like Karen and Jackie are both off. So we don't have a quorum anymore. So
So you can't vote.
We're stuck here forever, Mark.
well, at least till tomorrow.
Only a food truck can come and you'll be able to eat.
You know, it's time sensitive.
I'll get this for Tom.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Yay, we are adjourned.
Thanks.